Marvel, it starts when it links with a great clock of the Super God Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Congressman Yan's Visit. Li Qingyun now gradually understands what kind of road he is walking. It is a road that is led by his own thoughts and supplemented by the technology of the big clock. Only when Li Qingyun can think of it, the big clock will do it. When one day Li Qingyun thinks of something that the big clock cannot do, it will be a new research topic. And by that time, I believe that Li Qingyun will finally reach the peak of super god technology. Know, have, learn, and fully master. These are 4 stages, a process of 3 upgrades. What Li Qingyun has to do now is to repeat these 3 processes again and again. Know what to do. Have the corresponding technology and ideas. Learn to apply this technology. Then fully master this ability. Now, Li Qingyun has to wait for the manufacture of the void engine. He will participate in the whole process, watching the big clock control these intelligent mechanical arms, transforming the void matter into substantial materials bit by bit, and finally manufacturing it into the void engine bit by bit. There is a communication invitation from Counselor Wang Yan, the big clock reminded, but its action of manufacturing the void engine did not stop. Senator Yan, Li Qingyun remembered that when Nick Fury came over, he had contacted him. Later, the cosmic cube was decided to be handed over to Thor, and S.H.I.E.L.D. gave up the idea of taking the cosmic cube. All the soldiers deployed by Senator Yan outside the manor were withdrawn. Originally, I planned to cooperate with him, use the power of the country to strengthen myself, and help the country develop at the same time, but now, Li Qingyun looked at the mechanical arms in front of him, and he had a new direction. Directly through mechanization, like the god of death Karl, it is also possible to achieve self-improvement and subsequent overall upgrades. With the technology of the big clock and its powerful computing support, it is easy to operate these machines to make various tools. If the scale is expanded in the future, new robots will be manufactured to assist, which can also replace manual labor, and will do better than ordinary manual labor. After all, Li Qingyun does not plan to upgrade others to super soldiers. Tell him to come directly, I will make a decision after seeing the specific situation. Li Qingyun did not refuse directly in the end. The big clock sent a message to Counselor Yan, and Li Qingyun also stopped the research and design of the factory, and took back the void matter and the semi-finished void engine to the dark matter plane space. Although Li Qingyun could know whether anyone wanted to attack his laboratory. But there are many weird guys in the Marvel movie universe. What if 1 or 2 of them happened to avoid the exploration of the big clock and came to the laboratory? Those artificial intelligence devices without artificial intelligence programs are fine if they are seen by others. But if the void engine is seen by others, if the void matter is stolen, it will be a huge loss. In fact, when Li Qingyun was manufacturing the void engine and making the super gene potion, he had the big clock hide the space coordinates and shield all possible exploration information before operating. Wadodin, Heimdall and the like can directly see the situation in the laboratory through the barriers of the universe and objects. But the big clock uses dark energy to build a special energy barrier, and then uses the technology shielding of the void to ensure that it cannot be detected by anyone. Soon, Counselor Yan came. Along with Counselor Yan, there was a team of men in black. Each of them wore a standard black uniform and looked very mysterious. They were obviously a group of special personnel under the state agency. Their detailed data information was directly read out by the big clock and displayed in front of Li Qingyun. Finally, I have the opportunity to meet you, Mr. Li. Counselor Yan was still very polite. Although his status was not low, Li Qingyun was a real superpower who could still beat people from the god realm like Loki. People with ability should be treated with courtesy. No need to be so polite. Li Qingyun received him politely. Sit down. He invited Counselor Yan to sit down, and the men in black following him also sat around one by one. They did not stand, nor did they always guard Counselor Yan. Although their eyes were always on Li Qingyun, they weren't always on guard against any danger. But at least on the surface, they did not seem to be very alert. They just stood by Counselor Yan from the beginning and guarded like a door god. This arrangement is a gesture to show their trust in Li Qingyun. I don't know if Congressman Yan, just call me Wang Yan. Congressman Yan interrupted Li Qingyun. When those guys call me in English abroad, They like to call me by my position first and then my name, but we are at home, we can be more casual, Congressman Yan. Wang Yan said. Okay, Li Qingyun didn't bother. It was just a matter of title, there was no need to care so much. I'll get straight to the point. Wang Yan adjusted his sitting posture a little, and then said seriously. We have investigated and know that you are a person with supernatural powers, and you have some extremely high-end technology in your hands, so, we want to cooperate with you. We can provide you with some of the things you need, and you provide us with some equivalent technology. It can be considered as mutual benefit between us. Wang Yan's attitude is still very different from those higher-ranking congressmen of the United States. The United States wanted to get Stark's Iron Man technology, so it directly issued a notice to let him go to court for trial. Directly used the reason of endangering national security to force Stark to unconditionally contribute the corresponding technology. Now, Wang Yan is talking about cooperation and mutual exchange. The first point is that the attitude is very good. He did not force you to consider the country, nor did he define you directly as a threat. Although this strategy was made, Li Qingyun's own strength was also taken into consideration, and he would not be afraid of threats. But at least, the intuitive feeling given to people would not be too bad. Cooperation is win-win, mutual benefit. Li Qingyun understood Wang Yan's intention and the attitude of the country. But the result of the direct spread of super god technology may not necessarily be good. What the Super God Academy did in the Denner civilization is a good example. The technology I master is far beyond the current society. I believe you all understand the simple truth of promoting the growth of seedlings. Li Qingyun finally decided not to drag the country into the water. At least at this stage, he would not. I understand. Wang Yan is a smart man. He can understand the meaning and concerns of Li Qingyun's words. Chapter 52 Artificial Intelligence Mind Gem? Although I can't provide you with advanced technology, I can still provide some simple help. Li Qingyun didn't intend to let Wang Yan make a wasted trip. After all, he came with a gift. In the car outside their car, a very special metal was prepared. It was a meteorite from space that had landed on this land for a long time. The authorities knew that this piece of metal was very special, but they didn't know how to deal with it, so they thought of giving it to Li Qingyun. The data analyzed by the big clock showed that the metal contained in this meteorite was an alloy produced under extremely special circumstances in the universe. It has an extremely high melting point and excellent defensive performance. If it is used to make armor, it is just a good material. Although it may not be comparable to the Suine armor and dark alloy armor of the Super God universe, it is not much different. If a part of the dark matter can be found in the later stage to be integrated into the armor, then the defensive performance of this armor will be greatly improved. Li Qingyun is now making weapons. If this metal is used to make a set of armor, it is just right. Oh, Mr. Li is willing to help. Wang Yan couldn't hide a trace of joy on his face. I can't provide you with too advanced technology, but I can speed up the progress of some of the things you are studying now, Li Qingyun said. I will send you a document later, which will contain relevant information. When you read it, you will understand it. Li Qingyun did not tell Wang Yan what he gave him. But Wang Yan understood that since the other party gave it, it must not be something bad. Moreover, the most important thing is Li Qingyun's attitude. At least he was not as cold to them as he was to S.H.I.E.L.D. Thinking of S.H.I.E.L.D., Wang Yan's mind suddenly turned, and he took another careful look at Li Qingyun. S.H.I.E.L.D. was entangled with Li Qingyun not long ago. But this time, not long after Nick Fury and his team returned, S.H.I.E.L.D. had an accident. He is quite good at guessing. Li Qingyun, who could see what was in Wang Yan's mind, could only shake his head helplessly at this moment. In fact, he was guessed by Wang Yan. In the absence of any evidence, Li Qingyun was clearly busy at home and did not go out during this period. How could he directly lock himself as the first suspect? Moreover, if Wang Yan could guess like this, I'm afraid Nick Fury would also think of it when he has some free time. S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, and Hydra has been exposed, but Li Qingyun's troubles are probably not over yet. After sending Wang Yan away, he also got the special alien alloy from Wang Yan. Li Qingyun first threw it directly into the dark matter plane space, and let the big clock continue to analyze more information. Next, he had to continue to see how the big clock made the void engine. During this period of time, Li Qingyun had no time to find Hulk as a sparring partner, and Banner could finally breathe a sigh of relief and make up for the large amount of time occupied by Hulk in the previous few months. Years, in this state, entered a brief period of peace. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year has passed. The United States has been busy for another half a year. The remaining agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., led by Nick Fury, are entangled with Hydra. Iron Man ushered in a strong enemy of his, Qingyun, who controls the extremis virus, and led his extremis warriors to fight against him. Li Qingyun was very peaceful. In more than half a year, he not only built the Void engine, but also the armor. In addition, the scale of the underground laboratory has expanded again. A complete mechanical factory is gradually taking shape. In addition, the big clock even made 3 robot assistants for Li Qingyun. One is responsible for tidying up the manor, one is responsible for taking care of the house, and there is a first-class chef. Banner was shocked when he saw the appearance of these robot assistants. He knew that Li Qingyun had a lot of mysterious technology. He also guessed that Li Qingyun might have advanced mechanical technology. But he didn't expect that Li Qingyun could achieve this level. These robots are much stronger than the iron suits and iron robots made by Stark. The artificial intelligence of each one is about the same as that of Jarvis. Even in terms of humanization, it is even better. If Stark sees what you have here, I'm afraid he will suffer a big blow, Banner sighed. In fact, the speed of Li Qingyun's changes in the past 6 months can be described as incredible. It's not an exaggeration to say that he changes every day. It's okay, I just did it casually. Li Qingyun was not bragging, but he really did it casually. He just saw that his manor was still short of 3 people, so he asked the big clock to do it. When Stark was here before, he mentioned to me a plan called Ultron. At that time, I thought it was unlikely, but after seeing these robots of yours, I suddenly feel that this doesn't seem impossible, Banner said. What Stark thought of at the time was to create an independent and powerful artificial intelligence system based on artificial intelligence. This system will fundamentally protect the entire Earth. Perhaps a large number of robots will be created, which can replace the army and the police and become the guardians and managers of this world. Then, humans can live happily and safely on this Earth forever under their protection. Once artificial intelligence has thoughts and can be independent, then artificial intelligence itself will become one of the biggest threats to mankind. Li Qingyun rejected Banner's idea. The Ultron that Stark and Banner want to develop, isn't that the villain in Avengers 2? Now the key thing of this villain is still in his own dark matter plane space. That golden mind gem. By the way, the mind gem will not generate wisdom, and then use you to evolve into a more powerful and terrifying artificial intelligence, right? Li Qingyun suddenly thought of the scene where the mind gem evolved into Ultron based on the intelligent program studied by Stark and Banner. The mind gem has something similar to wisdom, but this kind of thing has been completely sealed by me. The Great Clock is the most powerful celestial computer in the Super God universe. Although the Infinity Gems have infinite energy, 6 of them combined together are enough to control the entire universe. However, if it is just one, it is actually not the opponent of the Great Clock. After all, the Great Clock is directly a nebula-level material computer, and its functions and computing power can surpass the nebula level. The Reality Gem can only turn the 9 kingdoms back into darkness with the help of celestial convergence. The Mind Gem can't make any waves under the monitoring of the Great Clock with its own hazy thoughts. Chapter 53 The Weapons Delivery Arrives. Even though you said that, the Infinity Stones are very mysterious, Li Qingyun was still quite cautious. After all, the Infinity Stones were 6 cosmic singularities that appeared at the beginning of the universe, and then transformed by the hand of eternity. They are too special. The Mind Stone has very powerful power, but it is ignorant and uncivilized in ideology. What kind of programming you give it will determine what kind of existence it will become, and since you have never tried to change it from the beginning, it will naturally have no problems, the Big Clock explained. This is the conclusion it came to after analyzing the Mind Stone. Unenlightened and uncivilized consciousness, Li Qingyun fell into a brief thought. Does it mean that it is like a newborn baby? It itself is blank and the purest appearance. When you start to instill thoughts into it and start to guide it to become a certain kind of person, it will slowly grow and take shape. But when you force a child to instill a certain concept into him, sometimes it will lead him to a completely different path. In the movie, the Mind Gem first fell into the hands of Hydra. Their thoughts were strong, and they tried to control the world with absolutely brutal and simple means. Later, Iron Man got the Mind Gem. Because of the influence of the illusion, Stark was eager to put a steel shield on the Earth, and wanted to have a powerful force to protect the world and make the world free of disputes. Banner, who participated in the development of the Mind Gem, wanted to stop all the chaos and stop all the wars. The joint influence of various thoughts led to the emergence of Ultron. And this Ultron only had the simplest ideas and an extremely crazy idea. Kill all the humans on the Earth, and there will be no more disputes on the Earth. Recast new life forms with steel, they will be stronger, have the power to protect the world, and absolutely obey Ultron's rule. Because they are part of Ultron. Later, the mind gem was embedded in Vision's head. This time, more things were integrated into the mind gem, and the most important point was Jarvis. The biggest difference between Jarvis and Ultron is that Jarvis was born in love. Stark was raised by his butler Jarvis. He loved Jarvis, so he named the artificial intelligence he developed Jarvis. Jarvis assisted Stark step by step from an arms dealer to a superhero willing to sacrifice himself to protect the Earth. Jarvis's knowledge base contains more knowledge of the world and more ideological value that can be provided to the Mind Stone. In addition, there is Thor, the god of thunder. In terms of simple mind and pure thoughts, Thor is definitely the most simple one among the superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A large number of thoughts came together and recast the Vision, which changed from a pure robot like Ultron to a mechanical life form. Although it is a machine, it has thoughts that are almost the same as those of humans. It can be said that it has a soul that only life forms have. I seem to understand. Li Qingyun thought of this and had sorted out the idea about the Mind Stone. The Mind Stone is a kind of cosmic consciousness, but this consciousness itself will not have subjective thoughts. If you want it to have subjective thoughts, you have to actively guide it. Obviously, the big clock will not do this, and Li Qingyun will not do this either. Just treat the Mind Stone as a source of energy. What's wrong with you? Banner looked at Li Qingyun in confusion. Li Qingyun had been in a daze since the beginning. At this moment, he nodded inexplicably, which made Banner even more confused. Oh, nothing. Li Qingyun came back to his senses. He just thought about the problem between artificial intelligence and the Mind Stone, and then began to think about why the Mind Stone gave birth to Ultron. He thought too deeply, so he was distracted and forgot that Banner was still by his side. You rarely get distracted like this. Banner didn't go into it any further, but just thought that this was quite rare. Really? Li Qingyun asked casually. This matter seemed to have passed by here. Boom. There was a thunderous sound, followed by a colorful beam of light falling from the sky. Li Qingyun recognized this sound and this beam of light. Isn't this the sound effect and special effect when Thor appeared? However, this time Thor didn't dare to land on the lawn. Last time he came here, Li Qingyun took away his Meow Hammer because he damaged the lawn. He didn't want to be punished by Li Qingyun for this again. Well, very good, Li Qingyun nodded with satisfaction. Not only because Thor didn't damage the lawn. More importantly, Thor brought the Sword of Heavenly Destruction this time. The Sword of Heavenly Destruction was wrapped in a layer of linen, with only a black hilt showing. After the Rainbow Bridge was repaired, I went to find Aka as soon as possible and asked him to help you make this sword. Thor walked to Li Qingyun and handed the Sword of Heavenly Destruction over. Why don't you give me a scabbard? Li Qingyun complained, but he still took the Sword of Heavenly Destruction from Thor's hand straightforwardly. He held the hilt with his right hand and tore the linen apart with his left hand. At this moment, a silver longsword appeared in front of everyone. It was exactly the same longsword as the Sword of Heavenly Destruction used by Hui in the Super God Academy anime. In addition to the material, the sword in Li Qingyun's hand is made of Asgard's unique metal, Eurometal. This sword contains the same thunder and lightning power as Thor's Mjolnir. The sound of the big clock rang in Li Qingyun's mind. Li Qingyun held the Xianxia sword in his hand and slightly mobilized the thunder and lightning power in his body. The thunder and lightning power in his body was slightly poured in, and the Xianxia sword immediately had a stronger thunder and lightning power burst out. Is this divine power? Li Qingyun could feel that this thunder and lightning power was the same as the thunder and lightning power he possessed. This is the same divine power as Thor. It is also the same divine power on Mjolnir. When my father knew that he was going to make a weapon for you, he also blessed it with the same blessing as Mjolnir, Thor said, and then he did not forget to add, this sword, except for its appearance, is actually the same as Mjolnir. The part about the Mind Stone in this chapter is purely my personal opinion. If you have different opinions, you can point them out in the comment section. Chapter 54, The Combination of Technological Weapons and Divine Power Weapons. Odin personally took action. Li Qingyun was a little surprised. What does he mean by this? Is he trying to show me goodwill? He is the father of the gods and the king of Asgard. Does he need to show me goodwill, or do both father and son have the same idea, afraid that I will try to steal Thor's hammer again? Li Qingyun didn't quite understand why Odin was so concerned about this matter. Logically speaking, since he beat his second son and stole his own son, Odin shouldn't like him even if he didn't hate him. My father said that being able to pick up Mjolnir proves your noble character, Thor explained it himself before Li Qingyun could express his confusion. This time, you helped stop Loki's farce on Earth. You deserve to have such a divine weapon, so, I specifically asked Eitri to make the quality of your weapon better. Li Qingyun didn't know how to start for a while. Is he a noble person? His cheating method is awesome, isn't it? The big clock directly read the detailed information of the spell on Thor's hammer through the dark data, and directly simulated the information that Thor's hammer thought through data programming. This operation was considered to deceive the spell itself, bypassing the spell's obstruction, and giving Li Qingyun the recognition of Thor's hammer. He himself didn't believe that Li Qingyun had a noble character. However, Aka said that the design of your weapon seems to be incomplete. Thor suddenly remembered what the dwarf king Aka said when he was making the weapon. It was originally incomplete. Li Qingyun breathed a sigh of relief. At least he didn't have to worry about whether he had a noble character. As for the sword of heavenly killing, why did Li Qingyun choose to make this sword? Wasn't it because it was a void weapon? Now that the main body of the sword is in hand, it's time to install the void engine on it. Grabbing in the air, a circular device appeared in Li Qingyun's hand. Without waiting for Banner and Thor to take a closer look at what the device looked like, Li Qingyun pressed it on the empty position of the Xianxia sword. The size of the circular device and that position just fit perfectly. Moreover, after the circular device was embedded, 2 red light spots appeared inside the device and began to rotate rapidly. Then, a red beam of light suddenly began to spread from the position of the circular device along a groove in the center of the long sword toward the tip of the sword. At this moment, a very special energy began to merge into the sword body and began to merge with the sword body. Rumble. Thunder flashed in the sky, and the hammer in Thor's hand suddenly shook at this moment. Lightning kept jumping on the hammer. This feeling was like a threatened cat, and its fur exploded. Snap! Suddenly, a thunder flashed on the Xianxia sword. The thunder was not very big, and the sound was not very loud. But in the moment it appeared, just a short moment, Thor's hammer was quiet. Hey, you are a coward sometimes. Li Qingyun looked at Thor's hammer. With a casual move, Thor's hammer broke free from Thor's hand without hesitation and flew into Li Qingyun's hand. At this moment, Thor couldn't help but panic. But at this moment, he quickly restrained himself. Because Thor knew that Li Qingyun already had the sword and would not want to steal his hammer. Probably not. He held the long sword in his right hand and the hammer in his left hand. Obviously, the momentum of Thor's hammer was suppressed, and the thunder force that had previously been emitted by itself had completely disappeared. Weapons made of Euro metal seem to have some spirituality due to the power of God. The sound of the big clock came in Li Qingyun's mind. Li Qingyun gently raised the Xianxia sword in his right hand. The weapons made by Super God technology are powerful, but they are not spiritual. Because in the Super God universe, the engines and algorithms drive those weapons. The weapons in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are different. Thor's hammer, and the storm axe that was created later, all have a certain spirituality. The storm axe will even be jealous. In addition, there are also the Black Death Sword, the Death Sword, and even the Infinity Stones have spirituality. The reason for such differences is the difference in energy form. These things called artifacts, the power they possess is not the conventional power in the universe, but the power of God. Something that sounds very mysterious. Although in terms of power, they may not be comparable to the flame-level weapons in the Super God universe, but they have spirituality. Li Qingyun's current Xianxia sword should have changed in this regard. Euro metal, forged by the hands of Eitri with neutron star energy, and blessed by Odin's spell. This weapon itself can be said to be an adapted version of Thor's hammer. But the addition of the Void Engine has given the Xianxia sword a new upgrade. The Void Engine has a conceptual attack method. It also has the ability to mobilize the endless energy in the universe for its use. If it is said that the upper limit of Thor's hammer power is the upper limit of Thor's divine power, then the upper limit of the power of the Sky Blade is the upper limit of the energy in this universe. As long as the algorithm is powerful enough, it is possible to call upon the dark energy of the entire universe to transform it into thunder power. Angel Yan has the blessing of Sky Blade number 7, and he also made a whole one to increase the thunder power to infinity. If it were Li Qingyun, with the blessing of the big clock, wouldn't the thunder power be infinitely greater than infinity? Return it to you. Li Qingyun threw Thor's hammer back to Thor. Although this meow meow hammer is cute, there is no doubt that the Sky Blade is more powerful. The combination of super god technology and Asgard's power will inevitably raise the power of this sword to a higher level. I said, the two weapons are almost the same except for the appearance. Thor's hammer took the meow meow hammer and said it casually, but he was relieved in his heart. Looking at Li Qingyun's current state, he is obviously very satisfied with his sword in his hand. Since he is satisfied, and it is the appearance that he likes and designed by himself, he will naturally not compete with him again. Well, from now on, no one will come to snatch Mjolnir from me, Thor sighed in his heart. Li Qingyun glanced at him, and the big clock had read his thoughts at this moment. This guy now knows that this hammer was originally made for his sister, and in the future this hammer will be crushed by his sister. I wonder if you will cry. At the beginning of the month, I ask for a monthly ticket. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Okay, it's decided. In the end, Li Qingyun decided not to attack Thor at this time. It would be better not to tell him the truth about the meow meow hammer. After a few years, the shadow of being deprived of power and exiled will dissipate, and he will be able to accept it after experiencing more. This person can only grow better when he has experienced more. I should go back. The Rainbow Bridge has just been repaired, and the 9 kingdoms are in chaos. I have to go to quell the rebellion. Thor stepped back a few steps and was farther away from Li Qingyun. Well, go. Li Qingyun waved his hand casually. Thor had wanted to leave a long time ago because of his subconscious action of taking his hammer away. In this case, let him go. This time when he goes back, it won't be long before his mother is killed, right? Li Qingyun looked at Thor, who was being teleported directly back to Asgard through the Rainbow Bridge. What's wrong with you? Banner looked at Li Qingyun, who was a little tangled at this time, and was confused again. Why is Li Qingyun so strange today? Tell me, if someone works very hard for you, and you know that his family is about to be in trouble, will you help or not? Li Qingyun looked at Banner. Of course I will help, Banner answered without hesitation. But he works for you, it's originally an exchange, you give him what he wants, he gives you what you want, it's a pure transaction between each other, Li Qingyun stated again. If Aunt Zhang's family has an accident, will you help? Banner asked back, and Aunt Zhang was the aunt who helped clean the manor before Li Qingyun got the robot. For more than a year, Li Qingyun and Banner live here, and they would definitely not be able to clean up such a large manor by themselves. Help. Li Qingyun did not hesitate. Although Aunt Zhang only came to work for him, if Aunt Zhang's family really had something wrong, he would never stand idly by. That's it, Aunt Zhang, you are willing to help, why are you not willing to help Thor? Banner had already guessed that Li Qingyun was talking about Thor. After all, there were only 3 people who made deals with Li Qingyun, Stark, Banner himself, and Thor. Stark had just experienced a disparate virus crisis, and now it was calm. Needless to say, if Banner had any problems, Li Qingyun would definitely help him. After all, the two of them were best friends. Then the only one left was Thor. Moreover, Thor had just left. Okay, that's it, Li Qingyun no longer hesitated. Since he had already had the idea of helping, there was no need to worry about it. Must the Traverser be left alone? What's the reason? Anyway, it's not a particularly dangerous thing. After taking action, if it fails, it won't make you lose anything. And once it succeeds, you can save a great mother. Although you won't get anything, at least you will feel happy in your heart. Let's go, let's find someone, once you decide, just do it. The space wormhole appeared in front of Li Qingyun, and he walked in without hesitation. Banner didn't hesitate and followed closely. On the other side of the wormhole, there is a university, I won't mention the name, I don't know which one it is. In the classroom, a middle-aged uncle with yellow hair is teaching students. And the content of his class is wormhole theory. This middle-aged uncle is Dr. Eric Selvig, who was controlled by Loki not long ago and studied the cosmic cube for Loki. Selvig. Banner immediately recognized who he was. Dr. Banner. Selvig also saw Banner, and he could recognize him immediately. The two of them were friends before, but later Banner gradually disappeared from the public eye because he became the Hulk, and the two of them lost contact. Next, I want to study some things about wormholes and celestial convergence. Do you want to come and help me? Li Qingyun stepped forward and asked directly. With a big clock, Li Qingyun knows all the knowledge about wormholes. But for the sake of safety, when facing the celestial convergence and the dark elves next, Li Qingyun still wants to find another helper. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, besides Jane Foster, Dr. Selvig seems to be the most suitable. Who are you? Selvig looked at Li Qingyun in confusion. He was also a big shot in the scientific community, but in the scientific community, he had never heard of someone as young as Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun gave his name. Are you the one who took Loki away last time? Selvig looked at the young man in front of him with a little shock. At that time, Li Qingyun took Hulk and Black Widow to deal with Loki. Selvig was under the control of the Mind Stone, so he didn't remember much. But afterwards, after the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. woke him up, they told him some of the things that happened at that time. Now that he heard Li Qingyun's name, he naturally understood it. Yes, it's me, Li Qingyun nodded. Okay, I'll go with you. Without any hesitation, Selvig agreed directly. Then, follow me. Li Qingyun turned around, and a brand new wormhole appeared again. What is this? Selvig looked at the wormhole that appeared in front of him, which seemed invisible but could be seen by everyone around him, and was puzzled. This is the wormhole, Li Qingyun said, and then walked in directly. Selvig listened to Li Qingyun's words, and the whole person was stunned. He stared at the wormhole and looked at it carefully, as if he wanted to see all its principles in one breath. Let's go. Banner patted Selvig gently from behind, and the doctor of wormhole theory finally reacted at this moment. However, at this moment, Selvig's eyes were burning with fire. The truth of the wormhole was in the hands of Li Qingyun. Students, the teacher is going to explore the truth. Selvig turned his head and said seriously to the group of students who had already been stunned. Then, he took a firm step and entered the wormhole. And the moment Selvig entered the wormhole and disappeared, the whole classroom immediately made a sensation. After reacting, the students were in an uproar. They originally signed up for wormhole theory, partly because of their passion, but more so just to get a major, get credits, and find a job. But at this moment, they discovered that theory can really be turned into reality. At this moment, the fire in the hearts of all the students in the classroom was ignited. As soon as I posted it, I thought that someone might say I was a saint, but I still posted it. If you don't like it, just criticize me in the comment section. I'm ready to be criticized. Chapter 56. I have to find another young and beautiful one. Selvig and Dr. Banner came out of the wormhole. What they saw was a school. Where is this? Banner was a little confused. Since they had already found Dr. Selvig, why did they go to school? Was they looking for someone else? So, Li Qingyun replied casually, and then his eyes locked on a beautiful woman who was walking in front of him. She was wearing sportswear, but it was hard to hide her figure, young and beautiful. I want to study science, but it's very depressing to stay with you two middle-aged uncles all the time. I have to find a young assistant, right? This was the idea that Li Qingyun suddenly had after finding Dr. Selvig. I have already traveled through time and become a super soldier, and I still want to be an old bachelor. This is absolutely not okay. Jezailan is chasing 10 school beauties. Is it too much for me to find a female doctor to be my assistant? Too much, not too much? Not too much at all. Do it when you think of it. Jane Foster is definitely not someone you can find. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, besides Jane Foster, there is also a very famous female scientist. Zhao Halen. There is no such person in Marvel Comics, so the one in front of us is definitely the one in the movie. I don't envy the Mandarin Ducks or the Immortals, I only envy the Chaebols every day, cough cough. Those who have fought their way out of the siege in that environment, their figure and appearance are absolutely needless to say. Apart from anything else, Zhao Halen's appearance can beat most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who are you? Zhao Halen, who was running over and whose heartbeat had not yet calmed down, looked at the three men blocking the road in front of him with a vigilant look. The security guards who were originally enjoying the beautiful scenery not far away also walked towards this site at this moment. We are all scientists. I have a way to help you complete the research on the regeneration cradle. Li Qingyun opened his mouth and directly stated the key. Zhao Hailin is a scientist, and he studies nanotechnology, which is the regeneration cradle technology that created Vision's body in Avengers 2. Are you scientists? Zhao Hailin was still suspicious and looked at the three people in front of him carefully. This is Bruce Banner, and this is Eric Selvig. Li Qingyun pointed to Banner and Selvig next to him, and finally to himself. My name is Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun? You were the one who made the sun flicker some time ago? Zhao Hailin obviously knew something about Li Qingyun. She and Stark knew each other. After all, they were both genius scientists in the scientific community. Moreover, the nanofield that Zhao Hailin was studying was also the new direction of the Iron Man suit that Stark was going to study in the future. Yet, Li Qingyun nodded. This, Zhao Hailin stared at Li Qingyun, as if thinking and judging whether Li Qingyun was really doing this. Do you want me to demonstrate it to you on the spot? Li Qingyun saw Zhao Hailin's doubt. No need. Zhao Hailin shook his head quickly. The sun flickered. Is this something that can be demonstrated just by saying it? Can you respect the sun a little? So, can you follow me now? Li Qingyun asked. I need to think about it. She didn't agree directly. After all, she was a woman, and she didn't know the three people in front of her. Okay, Li Qingyun also saw Zhao Hailin's hesitation. And he could understand that normal people would not go to a strange place with you just because of a few words. This is my address. If you decide, you can come to me yourself, Li Qingyun said, and a message was sent directly to Zhao Hailin's mobile phone. Looking forward to your joining. After that, he turned around and opened the space wormhole again. With Banner and Dr. Selvig, who looked confused, they returned to their own manner. Looking at Li Qingyun, who opened the wormhole casually, Zhao Hailin's heart was actually shaken at this moment. After returning home, it only took her 2 hours to make a decision. But she was not as impulsive as Selvig. She dealt with the situation at home first, and then came here. However, that was all later. Now Li Qingyun is taking Dr. Selvig back to his manor. Dr. Banner found it hard to understand why Li Qingyun suddenly went to find Zhao Hailin. Why did you suddenly think of going to find her? Banner had been with Li Qingyun for a while, and without the trouble of turning into the Hulk, he had time to study some scientific things on Earth. He also knew a little about Zhao Hailin, knowing that she was a newcomer with good talent in the field of nanotechnology. But the problem was that Li Qingyun originally said that he would only go to find one person, but how did he find two? And he was looking for Zhao Hailin. Is there anything wrong with looking for her? Li Qingyun asked back. No, Banner shook his head. It's just that you are planning to help Thor do something. You suddenly found two scientists, and they are in different fields. What exactly are you going to do? What Banner really couldn't figure out was the reason why Li Qingyun did this. I just want to find two helpers, Li Qingyun answered casually. Li Qingyun relied on the big clock to study the convergence of celestial bodies and wormholes, and so on, and he could easily figure out everything he wanted. But he couldn't do everything by himself. He still needed some helpers. However, what they were dealing with were all high-tech matters, and it would not work to find ordinary people. So, Li Qingyun went to find two people who were relatively outstanding in the field of science. In the future, he might have to go further and find more people, but he would find those people directly in China. Even if Li Qingyun could form his own civilization without relying on people, after all, science could not stay at one stage forever. The Great Clock has very advanced and powerful technology, but the Great Clock cannot improve itself. Li Qingyun will become stronger in the future, and perhaps even stronger than the strongest king of the gods, Holy Kesha. But Li Qingyun also understood that he was not suitable to be that kind of scientist. Just like Kesha and Hexi, Kesha could be the strongest, but in terms of technical research, she could not compare with Hexi. In the end, Li Qingyun still had to cultivate a group of outstanding scientific talents around him. The most advanced technology and the most powerful power can be in his own hands. But how to move towards being stronger requires such a group of people to innovate. Brainstorming is always better than being alone. However, by then, the resources must be firmly in your own hands. You must never let down your guard against those who might betray you. You must never let down your guard like Keisha let Liang Bin go out of weakness, or look down on the death god Karl at the beginning. Because smart people who are not under your control will definitely stab you in the back one day. Chapter 57 is now available. I just received a notice from the editor saying that the book will be on the shelves tonight, so I thought I should say something. But after thinking about it carefully, I don't know what to say. Playing the victim? Boasting? Or something else? Asking for subscriptions? I really want to see subscriptions, but this kind of thing still depends on mutual consent, so I won't ask. As for the guarantee of updates, I can only say that I will update every day, and I will work harder to update more after it is on the shelves. But I am a working cow, I have to go to work every day, and I really can't guarantee to update 10,000 or 20,000 or something. Well, that's all. In addition, thank you readers for your support so far. Your comments are also the key to making me better aware of my shortcomings. In the future, please leave more comments and correct my mistakes and shortcomings. So far, thank you. Chapter 58 Leave Notice. My daughter's foot was pierced by a bamboo stick in a trap dug by the kid next door. I was busy dealing with it, so I didn't write the article. I don't want them to pay compensation, but I caught him and pierced his foot with 3 holes with a bamboo stick. Is that reasonable? Chapter 59 The Birth of Ether Particles. Crossing the wormhole, Li Qingyun, Banner, Selvig and Zhao Halen all came together. Selvig came to study the wormhole. Banner knew that this matter was very important to Thor, and he came here thinking that Hulk could help if anything happened. As for Zhao Halen, she just came to join in the fun. She was a nanotechnology expert, and wormholes had nothing to do with her at all. Daisy, Selvig shouted, and not far ahead, a woman wearing glasses who looked very intellectual was looking back. She was Daisy Louise, a liberal arts student who worked as an intern with Jane Foster, and finally made her a doctor of astrophysics. Compared with ordinary people, she can also be regarded as a strange woman. Who are they? Daisy came to Selvig, but her eyes fell on Li Qingyun and the other 3. They are my friends, and they came here with me to study wormholes, Selvig introduced. Your friends? A surprised voice came. On the street next to him, a woman with brown hair was walking towards this side. It was Jane Foster who hurried over after receiving the news from Daisy Louise. I know him. He was with Thor when he came to Earth before. Jane came directly in front of Li Qingyun and stared at him. He is not with me. He is here to find his brother. Li Qingyun always felt that Jane Foster looked at him like she was jealous. Her boyfriend finally came to Earth, but he did not go to see his girlfriend, but stayed in someone else's house for 10 days. Don't worry, he will come to see you soon. Banner also spoke. He could see that the woman in front of him was obviously resentful of Thor. Really? Jane Foster's attention shifted to Banner at this moment. He couldn't come to Earth because the Rainbow Bridge was destroyed before, but it has been repaired recently, so he came to see you again. Banner suddenly realized that he seemed to have said something wrong. In the past, the Rainbow Bridge was broken and she couldn't come, so forget it. Now that it's repaired, she's going to find another man, but she still doesn't come to see me, right? A new wormhole has been detected. The sound of the big clock came into Li Qingyun's mind. Li Qingyun's face suddenly became solemn at this moment. Li Qingyun's change quickly attracted everyone's attention. Especially when he turned around and walked towards the unfinished building next to him without saying a word. Everyone was a little confused. They all realized that there was some special reason for this. But at this time, no one dared to disturb him. In fact, Li Qingyun's expression at this time was a little too serious. He ignored others. According to the guidance of the big clock, he quickly entered the unfinished building. Bypassed the huge unstable wormhole in the middle of the unfinished building. Li Qingyun's target is not a wormhole, he is looking for the coordinates of the wormhole that hides the ether particles. It's here. Li Qingyun stopped. In front of him, it seemed that there was nothing. But under the exploration of the big clock, there is a hidden wormhole here, and on the other side of the wormhole, there is a very weak but at the same time extremely powerful energy. The energy properties are completely different from the Mind Stone, but it can be confirmed that it is of the same level, the big clock judged. That's right, Li Qingyun can already be sure that there must be ether particles in it. An energy source that can be of the same level as the Mind Stone. But with different properties, what else can it be but other infinite gems? Moreover, at this point in time, in this place, the only thing that can appear is ether particles. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Qingyun took a step directly in. On the other side of the wormhole, although the environment here is very strange and looks like a ruin. But here, people can breathe normally. Big clock, Li Qingyun tried to call in his mind. Entering another space, Li Qingyun subconsciously confirmed whether the big clock could still maintain contact with himself. After all, the big clock is his plugin. With a plugin, Even if there is any accident, it can be dealt with quickly. But if there is no plug-in, there will be a huge lack of protection. Here, the big clock responded. Nothing more was said. With a perception of the surrounding energy at this moment, Li Qingyun began to explore. Soon, he found his target. It was a huge rectangular stone pillar. On the stone pillar, red runes were engraved. The style of the runes was exactly the same as the runes used by Asgard. Obviously, this was set up by Odin's father, the former king of Asgard. This is the stone pillar used to seal the ether particles. Below the stone pillar, it is suspended. Between the stone pillar and the stone platform below, there is a suspended gap as wide as a finger. The ether particles are in this suspended gap. Looking down, with Li Qingyun's eyesight, he can clearly see the state of the ether particles. The red particles that are constantly swimming like a stream of water. This is the particle form of the reality gem. Grabbing in the air, a test tube appeared in Li Qingyun's hand. Put the test tube between the gaps, and then try to drive the ether particles into the test tube with dark energy. Driving has no effect, the big clock stated. Driving doesn't work, then got it. Li Qingyun threw the test tube back to the dark matter plane space. Extending his fingers, he began to touch the ether particles directly with his hands. However, the ether particles did not enter Li Qingyun's body directly like in the movie, drilling into Jane Foster's body. Instead, as Li Qingyun stretched out his hand, it began to actively retreat. Is it because of my power that you retreat? Li Qingyun looked at the ether particles that were avoiding him. You resonate with Malekith? But don't you think that the energy in my body is much stronger than his? Li Qingyun said. At the same time, the dark energy in his body began to mobilize further. He was trying to use the energy in his body to integrate into the ether particles and then pull them out. However, the ether particles still did not react. I don't believe it. Li Qingyun made up his mind and took out the Xianxia sword directly. This time, at the moment when the sword of heavenly destruction was taken out, before he could reach out to the etheric particles that were pressed under the stone pillar flew out by themselves. It drilled directly into the sword of heavenly destruction and merged into the sword of heavenly destruction. Moreover, it drilled directly into the void engine at the core of the sword of heavenly destruction. Chapter 60 Void Engine and Ether Particles. This, Li Qingyun looked at the Xianxia sword in his hand in surprise. Looking at the scene of the red particles flowing in the void engine of the Xianxia sword, and the combination with the void engine. Is it because of the same source of energy that you like the void engine? Li Qingyun said doubtfully. Energy analysis shows that the two are not the same, the big clock said. The void engine controls the rules of the universe and produces effects from a conceptual perspective. Ether particles can reverse the rules and create reality. Even if the energy is not from the same source, there should be similarities that lead to such mutual attraction between the two sides. Right, Li Qingyun observed carefully, and he felt that what he saw should be the truth. The big clock did not judge what Li Qingyun said. Because the big clock did not understand what Li Qingyun said. The big clock is the pinnacle technology of the super god universe. But the infinite gems and ether particles are extremely mysterious substances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I will conduct a detailed analysis and make inferences based on your ideas, the big clock said, and in its anthropomorphic intelligent communication method, it emphasized the title of Li Qingyun for the first time. I'm not talking about you, but you. Li Qingyun is making progress. From the rookie who knew nothing at the beginning, he has quickly evolved into a super soldier with goals, ideas and thoughts. Perhaps, it's not very good yet, but at this speed, I believe that it won't be long before Li Qingyun will grow up. In the super god universe, it takes thousands of years for a god to grow. Even with the guidance of teachers and technology, it takes hundreds of years. Even in the Void Age, due to the evolution of the whole universe, a group of new gods and super soldiers began to rise rapidly. But the super genes of those gods have already taken thousands of years to adjust, and they have found the most suitable objects to match. Li Qingyun is different from them. Li Qingyun is a traverser, and he is also an ordinary person. In order to get rid of the plight of ordinary people as soon as possible, he became a super soldier from scratch at the fastest speed. Because it is impossible to find the most suitable super gene, the big clock gives him the most primitive template. Super God Universe, the super gene of the first god born by Shen civilization, the super gene of space principal Jilin. Now, in just over a year, Li Qingyun has gradually found his own goal. Moreover, Li Qingyun no longer needs the guidance of the big clock. He began to think for himself and then used the big clock to calculate the specific situation. The wormhole has fluctuated and will be closed soon, the big clock reminded. Well, go back first. Li Qingyun nodded, then turned and walked towards the wormhole. He did not put the Xianxia sword into the dark matter plane space as he did in the past, because he did not know whether the ether particles that had merged with the Xianxia sword would still resonate with Malekith in the dark matter plane space. The coordinates of the dark matter plane space must not be exposed. Even in the Super God universe, this is common sense that every super soldier knows. Because the coordinates of the dark matter plane space are discovered, the opponent is likely to try to crack and invade these coordinates. Just like the sacred knowledge treasure house of Holy Kisha. The only person who knows about it in the mellow heaven is Izai. And it is also because he may fall at any time, so Izai prepared in advance. This is not the Super God universe, and Malekith does not have the ability to invade the dark matter plane space. But this world is more dangerous than the Super God universe. The origin of the ether particles is very likely to involve other mysterious existences in the universe. Therefore, Li Qingyun must be careful. Go back to the location of the wormhole and walk directly over. As soon as he walked over, he saw a familiar figure. It was Jane Foster, who was holding a special detector in her hand. You? Yes, it's me, Li Qingyun answered, and he turned around and looked at the wormhole behind him. The wormhole disappeared quickly. This wormhole connected to the ether particles is very special, and that area is not easily accessible to everyone. At this time, Selvig and Banner also came over. They have been looking for Li Qingyun for more than 10 minutes, not only can't find him, but also can't get through the phone. You know, Li Qingyun's communication is absolutely impossible to have problems. Banner has known Li Qingyun for so long, and he has never said that he can't find him. Where did you go just now? Banner looked at Li Qingyun in confusion, and took a look at the sword of heavenly destruction in his hand. He knew Li Qingyun's ability and knew that he would hide some important things in his space at any time. This sword of heavenly destruction was thrown into the dark matter plane space by him not long after Thor sent it over. But now, he has been holding it. I went to a special subspace. Li Qingyun did not hide it, because there was no need to hide it. I found the ether particle, which is the biggest trouble caused by the gathering of celestial bodies this time. It's just that it is attached to my sword of heavenly destruction. Li Qingyun picked up the sword of heavenly destruction and placed it in front of Banner. Banner quickly adjusted his glasses and looked closely. He saw the red particles fused with a void engine, and he sensed the gamma energy as strong as the cosmic cube. However, the form of the gamma energy release seemed to be different. You said it would bring trouble. What kind of trouble? Zhao Helen also came up, but she didn't look as carefully as Banner. She was just curious about what kind of trouble such a group of things similar to Nanoians could cause. It will attract an ancient dark race, and this race wants to use these ether particles to bring the entire universe back to the Dark Ages, huh? A group of people looked up at the same time and all looked over. If I wasn't here today, it should have possessed you, because you are the most likely person to walk into the wormhole. Li Qingyun looked at Jane Foster. Jane Foster was silent. She was indeed the most likely person to walk into the wormhole here. She was still holding a device to detect the energy of the wormhole in her hand, and she had just arrived here, and she had an urge to go in. However, before she had time to go in, Li Qingyun walked out. You said it would attract a dark race? Who wants to snatch it to change the universe? Then whoever holds it will be in danger. Daisy noticed another important problem. That is, the danger that these ether particles will bring. That's a race, and if they want to rob it, it won't be just one or two people coming to rob it, right? What are you going to do with it? Banner also understood the danger of this thing at this time. You can't take it back to the manor. Li Qingyun naturally knew who would come to rob the ether particles. Therefore, he couldn't take the ether particles back home, because that would be like bringing a war over there. Chapter 61 The battlefield must not be at home. The Dark Elves were a group of crazy guys who invaded Asgard by force. They had huge spaceships and even small combat spaceships with powerful combat performance. If they appeared near the manor, not only would Li Qingyun's home be destroyed, but even the surrounding cities would be implicated. Li Qingyun wanted to help Thor avoid the tragedy of his mother's murder and decided to participate in this matter. But if his city suffered a catastrophe for this matter, he would never be willing to do so. The invasion of the Dark Elves will be very fierce. We can't bring the ether particles back to the manor, Li Qingyun said. Your manor is not far from the city. Starting a war there will indeed cause considerable damage. Banner agreed with Li Qingyun's statement. He did think that he should not fight the Dark Elves there. The other side is a powerful race, and we also need the assistance of a powerful race. When Li Qingyun said this, he looked up at the sky. When he saw this, Banner immediately realized what Li Qingyun was thinking. Didn't you say you wanted to help Thor? Why do you look like you want to ask Thor for help now? Banner thought so in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. Because in his opinion, no matter who helps whom, this method is the best way to deal with this matter. Li Qingyun could see what Banner was thinking, but he didn't refute it. What Banner saw was what was happening right now, and he didn't know what would happen in the movie. And Li Qingyun did this not because he wanted anyone to remember his kindness, he just simply felt that he should take action. What's more, now that he has obtained the ether particles, it can be regarded as giving himself enough rewards. It depends on the inexplicable resonance between the ether particles and the void engine. There is a high possibility that there is some special relationship between the two. Maybe Li Qingyun can also research something else from the ether particles. Walk out of the unfinished building and come directly to the street. Li Qingyun raised his head and looked at the sky. Heimdall, I know you can see it, Li Qingyun said. At the same time, in the Rainbow Bridge Transmission Center far away in Asgard, Heimdall's eyes turned to the direction of the earth. I have something important to do and need to find Thor. Please help convey it, Li Qingyun said again. Heimdall looked at Li Qingyun on earth who was looking up at the sky, and there was a little confusion on his face. But he still followed what Li Qingyun said and began to send a message to Thor. He had known Li Qingyun when Thor went to Earth to find the Cosmic Cube, and he knew the relationship between Thor and him. Now, Li Qingyun took the initiative to find Thor, and there must be something going on. Not long after, Thor came over. Thor couldn't see the situation on Earth, but when he heard that Li Qingyun wanted to find him, he realized that there was something wrong. Opening the Rainbow Bridge, Thor teleported directly to Earth. When Thor appeared, the first person to walk over was not Li Qingyun, but Jane Foster. She quickly approached, and then without saying a word, she swung her hand and slapped him. The sound of snapping was particularly clear in the street in front of the unfinished building. Jane, Thor looked confused. Snap. Another slap hit the other side of Thor's face. What's wrong? Thor was stunned. He couldn't figure out what was going on. I've been looking for you all over the world, but you refused to show up. Li Qingyun just said a word, and you came here immediately. Am I your girlfriend, or is he? Jane said angrily, and after she finished speaking, she seemed to feel unsatisfied, and kicked Thor's calf. Suren didn't hide either. He just didn't understand what this meant. Did Li Qingyun have something important to do with him? Why did he come here just now, but was beaten by Jane Foster first? Ahem, Li Qingyun coughed twice, attracting the attention of Thor, who was venting his anger and looking confused in front of him. Can you discuss your affairs slowly when you have time later? Li Qingyun's words made Jane Foster understand that it seemed that it was not the right time for her to vent her dissatisfaction. Thor looked at Jane Foster who had retreated to the side, and although he was still confused, he was relieved. At least, I don't have to be slapped anymore. What happened? Seeing that Jane Foster was not around, Thor immediately asked. This is a matter between you two, it has nothing to do with me. Li Qingyun called Thor here. But even if Li Qingyun didn't call him this time, he would still be slapped the next time he came to see Jane Foster. This is bound to happen, and there is no escape. Then why did you ask me to come? Thor actually understood Jane Foster's situation a little bit. Since the first separation, he has never come to see her again until now. And it's not that he hasn't been to Earth all the time, but he has come twice in a row, but he didn't come to see her. It's understandable that Jane Foster has resentment in her heart. For it, Li Qingyun put the Xianxia sword in front of Thor. Your Xianxia sword? Thor looked at the long sword in front of him in confusion. Is there anything wrong with it? I'm not talking about the sword itself, but the things attached to the sword, Li Qingyun reminded. Until this moment, Thor finally discovered the difference on the Sword of Heavenly Destruction. It was the special device that Li Qingyun installed when he got the Sword of Heavenly Destruction that had changed. What's inside? Thor didn't know about ether particles, but he only took a look and realized that this thing was special. Ether particles, ether particles. Thor was still at a loss. He had never heard of ether particles. But he had a hunch that this thing would have a lot to do with him, or with the entire Asgard. Li Qingyun would come to him specifically for this thing, and it must be related to this. This was snatched from the Dark Elves by your grandfather and then sealed, Li Qingyun said. My grandfather, Thor, was a little confused. The gods of their Asgard have a lifespan of more than 5,000 years. But for many years, there are really few grandfathers and grandchildren. Because although they have a long lifespan, they usually consider continuing the third generation after the first generation falls and the second generation rises. When Odin succeeded to the throne, Thor's grandfather was already dead. Thor was born 1,000 years after Odin came to power. Not only had he never seen his grandfather, he had never even heard of him. The Dark Elves that were defeated by your grandfather are not completely extinct, they are lurking, waiting for the emergence of the ether particles. Now that the ether particles are in my hands, I'm afraid it won't be long before the Dark Elves will come to kill us. Li Qingyun explained in detail. Thor, the god of thunder, gradually understood the importance of this matter. I have been working hard to update, and I was slacking off at work. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Odin's Unusual Behavior. Thor already roughly knew what this matter was. Ether particles, the Dark Elves. This also involved his grandfather. This matter must be known to his father, the current king of Asgard, the father of the gods, Odin. Let's go to Asgard. Thor already understood the purpose of Li Qingyun summoning him here. He also felt that it might be better to move the battlefield to Asgard. After all, Asgard is the land of the gods, and the power there is always stronger than on Earth. Summoning the Rainbow Bridge, Li Qingyun, Thor and Banner were teleported together. Everyone knew that they were going to fight this time. Although Jane Foster was reluctant, she still did not follow. In the transmission center of the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard, Li Qingyun and the other two walked out of the Rainbow Bridge, and the first person they saw was the Guardian of Asgard, Heimdall. His Majesty the King is waiting for you in the palace, Heimdall said with a serious expression. This Asgardian guardian who possessed the strange power to see through the universe already knew what Li Qingyun had said to Thor on Earth. Moreover, he had already reported it to Odin. It was about the ether particles, and there would be another war about to happen, so Odin had to pay attention to it. Okay, Thor agreed, and then led the way in the direction of the palace. However, when Li Qingyun walked past Heimdall, Heimdall kept staring at him. Li Qingyun frowned slightly when Heimdall looked at him like this. I don't think I have offended you. Li Qingyun stopped and turned around to look at Heimdall head on. No, Heimdall shook his head. What are you doing? Just curious. Curious? Li Qingyun was slightly confused. I'm just curious, how did you avoid my observation? Heimdall has the true vision eye that can see through the universe. Even in the distant universe, even if there are stars between them, he can still see what he wants to see. In this universe, there are very few people who can avoid his gaze. And Li Qingyun happened to be one of them. A person who could hold Thor's hammer, knew more about Asgard than him, the Guardian, and could avoid his observation. How could Heimdall not be curious? It's very simple, just give you a trick. Li Qingyun had considered the attention of people like Heimdall from the very beginning. From the initial creation of super gene potions to the later research on the Void Engine, Li Qingyun always let the big clock guard. So, you are the same person as Loki. I am much better than Loki, but tricks have always been his best. You are wrong, Loki's tricks are very poor, Li Qingyun said, and in fact, Loki at this stage is indeed very poor. Asgard's strongest magician, but he draws his sword at every turn. He is really a melee magician. Maybe, Heimdall did not continue to dwell on this issue. Odin was still waiting for Li Qingyun and the others, and he couldn't waste too much time. Let's go, Thor called. Li Qingyun did not stop and began to follow Thor and the others towards the palace. However, when he was about to walk out of the transmission center of the Rainbow Bridge, he could not help but look back. Heimdall, a man with a strange power that can see through the universe. This ability is just a gatekeeper for Asgard. But if this ability falls into Li Qingyun's hands, it will be an extremely useful power. Li Qingyun has the ability to use wormholes. If he can see any enemy, even if he is separated by the entire universe, he can still open a wormhole near him. Then, quietly, a shot on the head. At that time, Not only the entire Earth will be in Li Qingyun's control. Even the entire universe, no one dares to say a bad word about him. Of course, this can only be thought of. Li Qingyun does not have such ability. The big clock can control everything within a certain range, which is more powerful and accurate than Heimdall. But the larger the range controlled by the big clock, the more energy it consumes. If you want to control the entire universe, I am afraid that even if you burn out all the stellar energy in the entire universe, it will not last long. If there are 6 infinity stones that provide infinite energy, maybe it can be realized. Li Qingyun thought so, and then continued to walk towards the direction of the Asgard Palace. After walking across the long physical rainbow bridge and passing through several defensive buildings, he successfully arrived at the Asgard Palace. On the throne of the palace, there was an old man with gray hair and beard, and one eye was covered by black plastic. He was wearing golden armor and holding the eternal spear. He was the king of Asgard, Odin, who was known as the father of the gods. He was sitting on the throne at this moment, and the only remaining eye was staring at Li Qingyun. It was not a completely unfamiliar look. On the contrary, he seemed to have known Li Qingyun for a long time, and he looked at Li Qingyun as if he was looking at an old friend who had been waiting for a long time. Something is strange. This was the first thought that came to Li Qingyun's mind. Thor, take Dr. Banner with you to see your mother, Odin spoke, but the first sentence he said made Thor, Banner, and even Li Qingyun stunned. He was going to send Thor and Banner away. But why? Why did Odin have to send others away when he first met Li Qingyun? Go! Odin was no longer disguising himself, and his majestic words made Thor clearly feel Odin's attitude. Although he still couldn't figure out why Odin was like this. But Thor still took Banner with him and turned to leave the hall. After the two of them had left, Odin stood up. The eternal spear in his hand gently knocked on the ground, and then the door of the hall was closed. Li Qingyun's face was solemn, but he remained calm. He believed that Odin would not hurt himself because there was no reason at all. Moreover, the big clock was already prepared. As long as Li Qingyun was likely to be attacked, the wormhole algorithm would immediately take effect, and Li Qingyun would be teleported back to Earth in an instant. I have been looking forward to your arrival for a long time, Odin spoke, but Li Qingyun did not quite understand the meaning of his words. When I speculated about the future countless times, Ragnarok was always the inevitable ending, but one day, I suddenly felt that something was different, so, I made another prediction, and in this prediction, I saw a person who had the same divine power as Thor, but was even more powerful. At that moment, I suddenly realized that this might be the key to changing the future. I wrote this chapter on my phone to catch a long-distance train tonight. Today I have barely updated 10,000 words. I will continue to work hard tomorrow. Chapter 63 Predictions from the Warlock's Eye. Odin's words made Li Qingyun stunned. Predicted future. Meaning, Li Qingyun's appearance had been known to some beings a long time ago. Odin could predict, so did the Ancient One, who could also explore the future, know it long ago? If the Ancient One also knew it long ago, then everything he did might not be a secret. Why did he travel through time and why did he have the Great Clock? Also, who is the person who gave the order to the Great Clock in the first place? Li Qingyun couldn't figure out what was going on. The Warlock's Eye. Suddenly, Li Qingyun remembered something. It was something that appeared in a flash of a shot in Thor's movie. It was a treasure hidden in the treasure room by Odin, placed together with powerful artifacts such as the Cosmic Cube, the Ice Box, and the Eternal Flame. Yes, the Warlock's Eye also has the ability to predict the future. Odin's ability to know many things related to the future is also related to this. Maybe, he just saw the future with the Warlock's Eye. Li Qingyun's thoughts began to slow down gradually. The appearance of the big clock in his crossing, it must not be so easy to be known. Even if this person is Odin, it is not reasonable. Therefore, the most reasonable explanation is that Odin accidentally saw his own existence in the process of studying the future through the Warlock's Eye, a treasure that can predict the future. You saw everything about me through the Warlock's Eye. Li Qingyun looked at Odin, and the panic that existed subconsciously before was completely eliminated at this moment. Not everything, just some simple fragments, Odin replied. But even if it's just these fragments, I already understand that your existence is of great significance to Asgard. I am not an Asgardian. Why is it of great significance to you? The mood calmed down, the guess was confirmed, and Li Qingyun had completely returned to normal at this time. From the moment you set foot on this land, you have changed the future of Asgard. Odin has seen the future. He knows what would have happened in the future if Li Qingyun didn't come. Soon after, his wife was in danger of death. But now, Li Qingyun is here, and he came to save Frigga from the beginning. Frigga's death is the key to Loki's transformation. But if Li Qingyun is here, even if Frigga doesn't die, Loki can't be that bad anymore. Because Li Qingyun is Loki's nemesis. At least that's what Odin predicted in the future. Did you help me forge the Skysha sword so hard because you foresaw the future? Li Qingyun picked up the Skysha sword in his hand. No, your Skysha sword was made entirely because Thor was afraid that you would steal his hammer again, so he came to ask me for help. Odin shook his head and said. But his answer made Li Qingyun feel a little helpless. Thor, the god of thunder, really regarded himself as Thor, the god of hammer. Without the hammer, he was so scared. Thor needs to rely on himself to figure it out. The hammer is just his weapon, not the source of his power, Odin said. It's just that he needs some time to prepare. Aren't you worried that my intervention will cause Thor to never understand the truth? If that's the case, it's a blessing for him in Asgard. Li Qingyun didn't know what to say for a while. Not being able to awaken the power is also a blessing. If you consider it from the perspective of happiness alone, it seems to be right. Thor needs to go through painful trials before he can fully wake up. If he can't wake up in the future, it means that he doesn't need to go through such pain at all. This is indeed a blessing for Thor in Asgard. But in this way, wouldn't Li Qingyun become Thor's nanny? He helped deal with the incident of the Dark Elves. He also helped him deal with the resurrection of Hela after Odin's death. Li Qingyun didn't want to do this. He took action this time purely because he didn't want to see his friend lose his mother. And this matter also involves ether particles. But the next time the goddess of death Hela appears, it will be Thor's family affair. Why should I interfere in their family affairs? You should still hope that Thor can wake up earlier, Li Qingyun said. Although I am half a friend of him, I took action this time just because I happen to like the ether particles. I won't care if there is any danger next time. Li Qingyun paused for a moment, and then said again. Your family affairs are your own business, I will never interfere. Li Qingyun expressed his attitude. Odin can regard him as the key to Asgard's turnaround. But Li Qingyun will not let himself become the patron saint of Asgard. The invasion of the Dark Elves will come soon, and I need your Asgard army to help participate in the battle this time. You'd better make arrangements and organize manpower quickly. Let's get rid of them all at once, so that I can go back to Earth and continue my own life. Li Qingyun said that he came here from the beginning just to lead the Dark Elves away from Earth. Don't worry about this, Odin said confidently. The Dark Elves will be completely destroyed this time. As Odin spoke, he poked the ground with the Spear of Eternity in his hand. In an instant, the gate of the palace opened, and Thor and Dr. Banner both turned back to look at the hall. At the same time, a large number of soldiers were gathering quickly from the square of the Asgard palace. These fully armed soldiers, each of whom was ready for battle, were the regular troops of Asgard. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, apart from the two legendary wars, the two wars with the Frost Giants and the Dark Elves, they only appeared in such neat formations in Thor III when facing Hela's invasion. But that time, almost all the elite warriors of Asgard were neatly arranged and were all taken care of by Hela alone. Now, seeing these soldiers appearing in such an orderly manner, Li Qingyun subconsciously thought of that scene. Asgard's power, King Odin accounts for 98%, Thor accounts for 1.5%, and everyone else accounts for only 0.5%. Really, the performance of these soldiers on the battlefield is too poor. Chapter 64, Instant Kill, Cursed Warrior. Asgard's army is gathering. This is a sign that Odin has decided to gather the power of Asgard and go to war with the Dark Elves. Li Qingyun has come to Asgard this time, so he will naturally help. Besides, those Dark Elves are coming for him. The Dark Elves' target is the ether particles in Li Qingyun's hand. Asgard's early martial law made many things not develop as they did in the movies. When Algorm of the Dark Elves wanted to sneak into Asgard as a prisoner of war, Li Qingyun stopped him directly on the Rainbow Bridge. His disguised appearance may not be recognized by the soldiers escorted by Asgard. But Li Qingyun has the big clock, and he has been detected by the big clock since the moment he stepped onto the Rainbow Bridge. Are you not an Asgardian? Algorm looked at Li Qingyun standing in front of him and asked. His hand had already subconsciously grabbed the cursed crystal in his abdomen. Li Qingyun did not want to stop him from becoming a cursed warrior, because he just wanted to try and challenge this extremely powerful cursed warrior of the Dark Elves. I am indeed not an Asgardian, Li Qingyun replied. Your Dark Elves invasion this time is doomed to fail, but I can give you a chance. As long as you can defeat me, I can give you the ether particles in my hand. Li Qingyun raised the Xianxia sword, and the ether particles attached to the sword were naturally seen by Algorim. Arrogant guy, Algorim dug out the curse crystal from his abdomen. The red crystal contained an extremely strange energy. The moment Algorim took it out, the big clock had already recorded all the data it contained. Later, perhaps Li Qingyun would be interested in analyzing and copying this energy. I am arrogant because I have the capital to be arrogant. Li Qingyun is not brainless, and he does not have to create a strong enemy for himself, but he has the confidence to win from the beginning. In terms of sheer physical toughness, even if the curse warrior is very strong, Li Qingyun has a way to absolutely restrain it. That is to directly use a wormhole to transfer it to the surface of a star and burn it directly into nothingness. With the computing power of the big clock, so far, the only one who cannot be directly transferred by it through a space wormhole is Odin. Because the divine power in Odin's body is too huge, its value has reached an extremely terrifying level, and it is difficult to transfer it by ordinary micro-wormhole transportation. As for using the more terrifying space displacement, the energy consumed is too huge, and Li Qingyun will never use it unless it is necessary. According to the records in the database of the big clock, at that time, the god of death Karl made a layout in advance to transfer Kesha, and even used the 100,000 stars in the Dark Nebula as the basis to provide energy, so that Kesha could be transferred to the Emerald Star without being prepared. Now, Li Qingyun wants to let Algorim become a curse warrior before fighting him. It is precisely because he is absolutely sure that he will do this. Then, Li Qingyun wants to try again. What is the real power of the Xianxia sword he just got? It's not that you can't find Hulk to practice. But the power of the Sword of Heavenly Destruction is already at the level of Void Warrior. If it really hits Hulk, Hulk will definitely be injured. If you don't want Hulk to be injured, then the test subjects can only be those powerful villains. And Algorim is the first one Li Qingyun happened to meet. In order to better test, he will make Algorim a cursed warrior. You will regret your arrogance. Algorim crushed the red crystal in his hand with force. The next moment, a black smoke emanated from the crystal. Algorim was soon covered by the black smoke. When the smoke dissipated again, he was completely different. His body became more burly, his limbs were thick, and he exuded a strong aura. People could see his strength at a glance. He is worthy of being the strongest warrior of the Dark Elves who can easily crush Thor. Then let's try it. The sky sword in Li Qingyun's hand, the void engine in front of the hilt, began to rotate at a high speed at this moment. This is the look of Li Qingyun ready for battle. It was the sword of heavenly destruction, about to burst out with the power of the void level. Go to hell, Algorim shouted, and rushed towards Li Qingyun. The expression on Li Qingyun's face froze, and then he took a step forward. It was just one step, but Li Qingyun's body turned into a residual image the moment his foot landed. The residual image passed by Algorim's position, and lightning jumped on the sword of heavenly destruction. A clear wound appeared on Algorim's neck. If he hadn't been wearing heavy armor, his body's defense would have been greatly improved after he turned into cursed warrior. What was left on his neck at this moment might not be a wound, but a completely cut head. How did you? Swish. With the sound of the long sword passing through the body, the armor on Algorim's body was easily cut open like tofu under the attack of the sword of heavenly destruction. The muscles strengthened by the black energy were cut into neat incision. Swish, swish, swish. Li Qingyun's attack did not stop. When he and Hulk were practicing, they were more about testing their fighting instincts, their reaction speed, and the pure strength. But now Li Qingyun asked Algorim to be his sparring partner, and what he was practicing was real fighting. And fighting, if it is not for the purpose of killing the opponent, is not a real fight. Therefore, Li Qingyun attacked at this moment, without any mercy, and without dragging his feet. He launched his strongest fighting power at present. The speed of the second-generation super soldier, the thunder power of the Xianxia sword, and the conceptual strike ability stimulated by the void engine. The reason for the continuous attack is that the material of the Xianxia sword is Asgard's Yoru metal, not the original dark silver. In terms of sharpness, Li Qingyun's Xianxia sword is not as good as Hu Yi's. But because of the blessing of thunder power, the Xianxia sword is stronger in actual power. This is called loss must be gain. The attack soon stopped. Li Qingyun held the heavenly sword and stood in his original position. His attack was fast and fierce. It was so fast that the cursed warrior Algorim had no time to react. It was so fierce that Algorim's so-called invincible body was completely chopped into pieces under Li Qingyun's continuous attack. From drawing the sword to putting it away, the whole process took less than 10 seconds. The last cursed warrior of the Dark Elves has fallen on this rainbow bridge. Chapter 65. This is how a real battle should be. On both sides of the rainbow bridge, there was a large group of people watching. Thor, Banner, Sif, and the 3 warriors of Asgard. They followed Li Qingyun from the beginning. Originally, they stayed here in case of emergency. They saw that Li Qingyun was going to challenge Algorim in his strongest state, and thought that what they were about to see would be a fierce battle. But at this moment, they were dumbfounded. Li Qingyun just made a move, and it only took a few seconds to end the battle. The lightning-fast speed, the figure that disappeared in an instant, and the sharpness of the Xianxia sword. In Li Qingyun's own opinion, the Xianxia sword was not sharp enough because it was not dark silver. In the eyes of Thor and others, it was an extremely sharp divine weapon. This was caused by different expectations. Is he that powerful? Sif and others all looked at Thor and Banner. But at this time, Thor and Banner were also confused. This was the first time they saw Li Qingyun fight with someone in the true sense. Before, he would train with Hulk for a long time. But Li Qingyun at that time was not like this no matter how you look at it. There was no rigid fight, no back and forth tug of war. There was only one fatal move. From the first sword Li Qingyun drew, Li Qingyun aimed at Algorim's neck. He wanted to chop off Algorim's head with one sword. It was just because Algorim's physical defense became stronger after being strengthened, and there was also the protection of armor, so Li Qingyun didn't succeed in one sword. This is the real battle. Heimdall's expression was extremely serious. He is the guardian of Asgard and the controller of the Rainbow Bridge. He is also the one who has seen the most in Asgard except Odin. The truly powerful warriors in the universe often fight like Li Qingyun. Either don't make a move, or since you have already made a move, it is naturally based on a sure kill. If it is confirmed that it is an enemy, then being kind to the enemy is cruel to yourself. Don't look at it. Li Qingyun put the sword of Xianxia in the temporary scabbard behind him. Because the Xianxia sword with ether particles cannot be placed into the dark matter plane space, he has been carrying it with him recently. Since Algorim has appeared, it won't be long before the Dark Elves will launch a general attack. You must prepare in advance. Li Qingyun didn't think there was anything wrong with his fight. He didn't care too much about the discussions of the people around him. He acted decisively, which was what he should do, and it was natural. In order to lure them out, we have to make everything look normal. Pack up Algorim's body and take it away, except Heimdall. Everyone else will retreat to the palace. Li Qingyun started to command directly. Everyone present also subconsciously followed Li Qingyun's instructions and began to get busy. Some were cleaning the battlefield, some were escorting other prisoners to Asgard prison, and some were going back to the Rainbow Bridge to ambush. Everyone took action. Li Qingyun also retreated to the palace. He stood in a corridor of the palace and looked at the starry sky in the direction of the Rainbow Bridge. The big clock can detect everything within tens of millions of kilometers around it. Any disturbance will not escape the monitoring of the big clock. But they still arranged it in advance, in order to let the Dark Elves enter Asgard. At the same time, it is also to take precautions. What if the big clock fails to detect the Dark Elf spaceship with invisible ability? After all, they are also the Dark Elves who can avoid the exploration of Heimdall's true vision. But it turns out that his precautions are unnecessary. The detection and monitoring capabilities of the big clock are unparalleled. The Dark Elf spaceship just appeared in the nearby starry sky and was immediately detected by the big clock. The dark energy used by their spaceship and the huge size of the entire spaceship were all found and analyzed by the big clock at the first time. Even how many people are in this spaceship and where each person is located, the big clock has accurately located it. If I have a big move like the Skyblade Judgment now, I can kill them directly with one move, Li Qingyun sighed. Although he already possesses void-level weapons such as the Xianxia sword, he is still only a second-generation super soldier after all. His most powerful attack method now may be to attract endless thunder to bombard. But given the size of the Dark Elf spaceship, Li Qingyun's simple attack is not enough to destroy it. If the energy is stored for a long time, the Dark Elves will turn around and leave immediately once they see it. By setting up the dark matter plane, the energy gathering speed can be accelerated, and the endless thunder can also achieve the same as Angel Yen, increasing the thunder energy to infinity in a few seconds. The big clock immediately gave a solution based on what Li Qingyun thought and the questions he raised. Set up the dark matter plane space. It seems that it's time to start. Li Qingyun was not in a hurry to set up the dark matter plane space before, because he had no real enemies yet. On Earth, whether it was the past Shield or the current Hydra, they were all jumping clowns. As for other supervillains, under the monitoring of the big clock, no one had the opportunity to get close to him. The current Earth is actually much safer than in the movies, because everything is under Li Qingyun's control. But now, he has taken the initiative to join the war with the Dark Elves, and he finds that he still needs to gain more abilities faster. Through the construction of the dark matter plane space, he can gain more abilities for himself. Do you need me to start using the factories on Earth to manufacture equipment immediately? The big clock asked Li Qingyun's opinion. Well, let's get started, Li Qingyun nodded. Then, at the same time, in his manor on Earth, the fully automatic mechanical factory located underground began a new technological upgrade. After the technology of the entire factory is upgraded, they will start to manufacture more super technical things. However, Li Qingyun's attention now still has to be on the invisible spacecraft of the Dark Elves that is slowly approaching Asgard. Watching them gradually approaching Asgard. Watching the more than 10 small combat spacecraft separated from the mothership. Everyone get ready, they're here, Li Qingyun said, and his voice, at this moment, was synchronized to everyone. Chapter 66 The Dark Elves came and were wiped out. The Dark Elves are coming. In the movie, they came unexpectedly, so Asgard was caught off guard. But now, Asgard has already made preparations for defense, and everyone is waiting for the Dark Elves to fall into the trap. Li Qingyun was the first one to see the Dark Elf spaceship among all the people. But the first one to take action was Heimdall. As the gatekeeper of Asgard, it was completely reasonable for him to be the first to attack. Moreover, this guardian of Asgard could no longer hold back. He relied on his intuition to feel the approach of the spaceship. When they entered a certain distance, he could see them clearly and launch an attack. This is a reasonable way to grab the credit, Li Qingyun sighed. Now in Asgard, there are many people who are ready to fight. Thor, the Hulk, the three warriors of Asgard and Sif, all of them are like this. Don't worry, everyone will get a share. Li Qingyun could only say this in the communication. Especially Hulk, he loves fighting the most. If Li Qingyun was not here, no one here would be able to control him. Watching, those spaceships crossed the range of the Rainbow Bridge. Watching, the huge mothership has also entered the range of Asgard. 5 seconds left. Once the time is up, I will remove the stealth form of all their spaceships. Li Qingyun counted down for everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, roar. Hulk rushed out first. He jumped directly on the spot and jumped to a small combat spaceship that had just suddenly revealed its appearance. Thor waved Thor's hammer and flew towards another one without slowing down. The three warriors of Asgard joined forces with each other. Two of them built a bridge below, and then threw Fandral into the air with force. Sif raised the longsword in her hand, waiting for the Dark Elves who would land on the ground later. At this moment, other soldiers of Asgard also drove airships to meet the Dark Elf spaceships. What is going on? Why do they seem to have been prepared for this? Why is Asgard's shield still there? Where is Algorin, the king of the Dark Elves? The one called Malekith was confused at the moment. They had planned a sneak attack well. How did it suddenly become an ambush? Looking at the soldiers and warriors who suddenly rushed out of the building on the edge of Asgard. Looking at the shield that had already covered the entire palace and the main residential area. Malekith was completely confused. Of course, we knew you were coming. Li Qingyun suddenly appeared behind Malekith. The Dark Elf's king immediately turned around in shock. Looking at Li Qingyun holding the Skysha sword, his face changed from shock to nervousness. He saw the ether particles on the Skysha sword. But the problem is that the ether particles are not flying towards him at this moment. Although he can sense the existence of the ether particles, the attitude of the ether particles towards him now seems indifferent. The strong mutual response and the past is gone. Ether, how could it? Malekith looked at the sword of heaven's destruction, and then looked at Li Qingyun. It's you control it. Malekith felt unbelievable. It was even more unbelievable than Asgard had known that he would invade and prepared for it. This was the sacred object of the Dark Elves, and it was the treasure that Malekith used to change the entire universe. How could it be controlled by someone else now? It was my sword that controlled it. Li Qingyun did not control the ether particles. In the past, the Dark Elves poured too much into the ether particles, which made the ether particles have a great liking for Malekith, the owner. So even though 1,000 years had passed, they still had a sense of each other. But the emergence of the Void Engine changed some of the conditions of the ether particles. Compared to changing the entire universe with Malekith, it seems that the ether particles prefer to attach themselves to the Void Controller. Both have a certain ability to rewrite the rules of the universe. So the ether particles are more interested in the Void Engine, and naturally no longer have a great liking for Malekith. Your sword. Malekith looked at the Xianxia sword in Li Qingyun's hand in disbelief. Now, your questions have been answered, you can die without regrets, Li Qingyun said, and swung the long sword in his hand. A sword energy flew out from the tip of the sword and directly cut Malekith's throat. Although he is the king of the Dark Elves, his defense is far inferior to Algorim. After Algorim transformed into Cursed Warrior, he could withstand several attacks from Li Qingyun with his thick skin and flesh. But this Malekith was only cut by a sword and he was gone. The Dark Elf soldiers around were all dumbfounded at this moment. Big Clock, locate all the Dark Elves in the spacecraft and teleport them outside, Li Qingyun ordered, and the Big Clock immediately began to count. The Dark Elves in the spacecraft, one by one, were all transferred to the ground of Asgard in panic and confusion. As soon as they appeared, a large number of Asgardian soldiers swarmed in. If they were fighting the Asgardian soldiers in a normal state, they could still fight each other with the weapons in their hands. But now, they were teleported out in a daze, and then suddenly attacked. They were not prepared at all. Many Dark Elves didn't even have time to raise their guns before they were pierced through the chest by Asgardian soldiers. Big Clock, can you control this spaceship? Li Qingyun didn't intend to destroy this huge spaceship directly. There are technologies of the Dark Elves in it, and some of them are black technologies. For example, the stealth function of the spaceship, and the black hole bombs they use. The data control system of the entire spaceship has been successfully taken over. With the help of the Big Clock, this mere mothership of the Dark Elves was still easy to capture. Very good, Li Qingyun nodded with satisfaction. He walked to the front of the cab and looked at the battlefield outside through the glass window. The Asgardian army, which had been waiting for a long time and holding back its strength, soon wiped out all the Dark Elves. After smashing 3 small spaceships, Hulk seemed to be unsatisfied and started yelling at the mothership where Li Qingyun was. Fortunately, Li Qingyun quickly said that he had already controlled the spaceship and told him not to touch it. Otherwise, Hulk would definitely rush over and smash this huge spaceship. Chapter 67 The Spoils After the War, the Mothership plus the Cosmic Cube. The huge Dark Elf mothership was hovering next to the Rainbow Bridge. Thor, Hulk and others came to the bottom of the spaceship. Did they say that the Dark Elves could compete with Asgard? Why were they wiped out just at the beginning? The 3 warriors of Asgard were not satisfied with the fight. They prepared for 2 or 3 days, but the other side invaded and the fight was over in just 10 minutes. The Dark Elves didn't even touch the gate of the Asgard Palace. This is because we knew it in advance and arranged it in advance. The most important thing is that Li Qingyun exposed all their spaceships to us at the beginning. He even took action personally to eliminate the king of the Dark Elves and control the entire mothership. Heimdall was still rational. He knew the key to victory in this battle. Moreover, the previous Algorim was obviously not as weak as they saw. If Li Qingyun hadn't found him in advance and killed him, then once he successfully mixed into Asgard, and then cooperated with the Dark Elf mothership at a critical moment, he might really be able to directly break through Asgard's outer defense. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be in danger in 100 battles. Li Qingyun walked out of the mothership. Why was he so peaceful on Earth? Why was he able to fight this battle so easily? The reason for everything was absolute control. With a Big Clock, Li Qingyun saw the Dark Elf spaceship as soon as it appeared. On Earth, the Big Clock can control almost all the information of the entire Earth at any time. Before anything began to affect Li Qingyun, he had already dealt with it. The Hydra wanted to come and attack, but Li Qingyun directly exposed it in advance, and that was why. Because we knew it in advance, we can easily win, Li Qingyun said. This time, the Dark Elves are definitely falling into a trap. If we still have to fight so hard under such circumstances, then you Asgard can't be considered a god clan. No one in the crowd objected to what Li Qingyun said at this moment. Everyone knew the truth and understood the reason for the victory. It's just that because they won too easily, they felt a little flattered. What are you going to do with the spaceship? Thor looked at the huge dark elf mothership behind Li Qingyun. Take it back to Earth and study it carefully. Li Qingyun has no time to study this mothership carefully yet. But he will definitely study it carefully so that he can finally record all the technologies involved, which are different from super god technology, into the big clock. The power of the big clock lies in its powerful computing power and its huge database. Without the knowledge and practice accumulation of Shin civilization for more than 200,000 years, without the space principles tens of thousands of years of space travel, and without the death god Karl's persistent research on the void, how can the current big clock provide so much help to Li Qingyun? Just the super soldier gene that Li Qingyun has now, and the sword of Xianxia in his hand, are completely dependent on the information in the database of the big clock. Therefore, further expanding the database of the big clock is a very important procedure. If you bring it to Earth, I'm afraid it will directly cause a big storm, Thor said. This spaceship has a stealth function. I can just turn it on and take it back. Li Qingyun was not worried about this problem. The mothership itself has a stealth function, and the big clock can hide the big clock so that it cannot be discovered by any technological means on Earth. Then you are not going to leave now, are you? At least you have to stay for the celebration banquet. Yes, you have to stay for the celebration banquet. Fandral, Volstagg and Hogan, the three who are collectively known as the Three Warriors of Asgard, all came up at this time. Of course, how can I not attend the celebration banquet? Li Qingyun naturally would not resist a banquet. Although he is rich now and has no shortage of delicious food. But simply eating well is not the same as having a banquet. What is needed is an atmosphere, and a lively atmosphere. Celebration banquet, Hulk was also shouting. He smashed 3 small spaceships today. Although he was not satisfied, he had also exercised his muscles. Naturally, he wanted to have a good meal at this time. In that case, let's go, Thor shouted loudly. A group of people, noisily, walked towards the banquet hall of the palace. Afterwards, a celebration banquet that lasted the whole day was held in a lively manner. During this period, even Odin and Frigga, the king and queen of Asgard, came in person to congratulate everyone. By the next day, Li Qingyun and Hulk had eaten and drunk their fill and had a good night's rest. They were ready to set off back to Earth. Thor also asked to go with them because he had to go back to Jane Foster. He had been gone for more than 2 years before, and when they met again, Thor was slapped twice and kicked. If he left without looking back this time, I'm afraid the two of them would be completely broken up. Why don't you use the Rainbow Bridge to go to Earth? Looking at Thor standing next to him, Li Qingyun felt a little confused. My father said that you will take the spaceship back to Earth this time. I am afraid that it will be inconvenient for you, so I asked me to bring you the cosmic cube so that you can use its power to bring the spaceship back. As Thor spoke, he took out the cosmic cube. When he saw the cosmic cube, Li Qingyun frowned. This was a hint that this was a gift from Odin. Odin was trying to win him over. Then give it to me. Li Qingyun took the cosmic cube. Although he knew Odin's intention, he could not refuse the cosmic cube. The big clock needs enough energy to speed up the calculation. In order to avoid consuming too much stellar energy and attracting the attention of the celestials or observers in the universe, it is best to use the energy of the Infinity Stone as a substitute. The energy output power provided by a Mind Stone is limited. Ether particles are special, and Li Qingyun has not yet decided whether to use them to power the big clock. Therefore, the appearance of the cosmic cube is just right for him. Without saying too much nonsense, Li Qingyun drove the energy of the cosmic cube and opened a huge portal directly in front of the Dark Elf mothership. Under the control of the big clock, the mothership entered the portal in an invisible state. On the other side of the portal is the space outside the Earth. Because the big clock's simulation concealed the portal opened by the cosmic cube, and it is a distance away from the Earth, it cannot be directly observed by humans on the Earth. As for some related artificial satellites, the big clock can directly change their data so that the relevant information will not be transmitted back to the ground. A huge portal opened by the cosmic cube. There is also the arrival of a huge dark elf mothership. No one has noticed it. Chapter 68 3 Infinity Stones. Li Qingyun and Banner return to Earth. At this time, the celestial bodies have not ended. On the contrary, this strange phenomenon has just begun. A large number of natural wormholes appeared in various regions of the world. However, without the appearance of the Dark Elves, there would be no disaster. At most, Some strange encounters triggered a small number of people's fantasy adventures. Li Qingyun ignored these. He returned to the Earth with a huge dark elf mothership. Zhao Hailan and Selvig also returned to the manor. In addition, the two young scientists sent by the Counselor Yang have also come. Li Qingyun did not pay special attention to them, but arranged them casually in the manor. According to their areas of expertise, independent laboratories were prepared for them. As for what they were asked to do in the future, and their communication with the banner and others, Li Qingyun had no intention of paying attention to it for the time being. This time when he went to Asgard, he could bring back the cosmic cube, which was something Li Qingyun did not expect at the beginning. Give me the cosmic cube. What did Odin see through the warlock's eye? Li Qingyun held the cosmic cube and felt the temperature emanating from it. He couldn't figure out why Odin did this. The ether particles were already in Li Qingyun's hands. Odin had tried to collect the Infinity Stones, so he must know that the ether particles were one of the Infinity Stones. In the movie, Odin sent the ether particles to the void for safety reasons and stored them separately from the cosmic cube. But now, Odin gave the cosmic cube to himself, even though he knew that Li Qingyun already had the ether particles. With a Mind Stone, I now have 3 Infinity Stones in my hands. The plot development in this movie lasted for several years, and the 3 Infinity Stones that were finally brought out were so easily in my hands. Looking at the cosmic cube in his hand, he looked at the sword of heaven's destruction placed aside, and the Mind Stone that continued to provide energy to the big clock in the dark matter plane space. Originally, Loki used the cosmic cube to trigger a war in New York, which prompted the development of the plot of Avengers 1. The emergence of the ether particle triggered the war between the Dark Elves and Asgard. The Mind Scepter would have led to the birth of Ultron and activated the mutant potential in Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Prophecy, foresight, and absolute control, although some of it is because I am a time traveler, but the main reason is because of the big clock. Li Qingyun knew very well that the big clock was his biggest cheat. Although I haven't fully mastered the big clock and haven't been able to control all of its abilities, but there is no doubt that because of the big clock, I can develop so smoothly. Others who traveled through time and space to get the 3rd Infinity Stone may have fought many battles, killed many people, and acted a lot. But Li Qingyun didn't need to do that. The existence of the big clock allowed Li Qingyun to avoid many troubles in advance. When Li Qingyun dealt with problems, he didn't need to participate in various superhero events. He only needed to consider how to master the big clock's abilities as quickly as possible, and how to make the big clock in himself stronger. The god of technology does not need to fight and kill, but to study technology itself. Big clock. If you add the cosmic cube, how much can your computing speed be improved? Li Qingyun asked. He is ready. He wants to upgrade to the 3rd generation. He needs to develop the void engine and obtain more void matter. This is what he needs now. 3 times, Big Clock gave an answer. With the Space Stone and the Mind Stone, and with the help of the power of the Space Stone to speed up the energy transmission between other stars in the universe, my computing speed can be at least 3 times faster than it is now. In addition, the number of stars that can be bound and absorbed in the Milky Way has exceeded 10,000. Through the Space Stone, it may be expanded to 50,000 in a short time. Combined with the energy of the 2 Infinity Stones, the Mind and Space Stones, in a silent state, it can barely reach the normal operation mode of 100,000 stars when the big clock is in the hands of the god of death Karl. As for high power outputs such as space phase shift, if it is arranged in advance, it can also be achieved without consuming the life of the star. At the beginning, due to energy constraints, the big clock had to temporarily mobilize the internal energy of the planet when dealing with Hulk. But now, the layout of the big clock has basically taken shape, and with the addition of 2 infinite gems, its computing efficiency has basically reached the normal level. The big clock now can trap a Hulk, let alone start a calculation of the universe world tree. That's good, Li Qingyun said. For the big clock, as long as there is enough energy, it can play a powerful enough function. And for Li Qingyun, the stronger the big clock is, the stronger he is. Now there are ether particles. With a casual move, he picked up the sword of Xianxia. He can throw the mind gem and the cosmic cube directly into the dark matter plane space to power the big clock. But the ether particles still can't do it. It's not that anyone can still sense its existence. Since the death of Malekith, the induction of ether particles with the outside world has actually disappeared. But the problem now is that the ether particles have always been attached to the void engine of the sword of Xianxia in the form of particles. It now not only does not provide huge and unlimited energy like the Mind Gem and the Space Gem. Even Li Qingyun was not sure whether it would affect the Void Engine. Although the data monitored by the big clock now showed that the Void Engine was not disturbed at all, the output and operation data were normal. The ether particles sticking to him always made him feel a little uncomfortable. However, this may also be an opportunity to study the relationship between the Void Engine and the ether particles. Li Qingyun thought about it and turned this discomfort into a state that was beneficial to him. If I can analyze the relationship between the ether particles and the Void Engine through this state, maybe when I upgrade the Void level Gene Engine later, I can consider applying the ability of the ether particles to myself. That may improve the ability of the Void Engine. Maybe it can also change the divine body. Danger and opportunity always coexist. If there is an unexpected appearance, there is a high probability that there will be a surprise. The key to everything is still in your own control. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Upgrade, the Third Generation Super Warrior. The Cosmic Cube and the Mind Gem were used as reserves to power the big clock. The ether particles were still on the sort of heavenly blade, so they could only be studied and analyzed. In the next 2 years, Li Qingyun spent almost all his time in this continuous analysis and research. 3 infinity gems set up the dark matter plane space, and Li Qingyun was very busy. The 5 scientists who followed him gradually integrated into Li Qingyun's busyness. Banner's talent in the gamma field. Selvig's research on astrophysics. Zhao Heilin's nanotechnology has also matured. Dr. Wang Haiming and Dr. Chen Li, sent by Counselor Yan, have also made amazing progress in their respective fields of nuclear physics and chemistry. Especially Chen Li, she has been studying the super gene potion that Li Qingyun had studied with Banner in the past. She has even found from the materials of those potions that 1/3 of them are used to cover up. If she is given enough time, perhaps within 1 or 200 years, she can rely on herself to figure out the basic formula of the super gene potion. If she is given some guidance, she can achieve this step in her lifetime. If she is given some key information, she may be able to research it in less than 10 years. These are the judgments made by the big clock after analysis. However, there are 2 prerequisites. The first is that Chen Li has to live long enough and has been focusing on the research of super gene drugs, so that she can completely rely on herself to simulate the basic formula. But it is obvious that humans on Earth now normally do not live more than 100 years old. Even if they can really live to 1 or 200 years old, almost no one can concentrate on research in one direction for hundreds of years. The second condition is that someone gives guidance or teaching. And this is also the key that is most likely to help her achieve a breakthrough in research. However, Li Qingyun has no such plan for the time being. In the past 2 years, Li Qingyun has been immersed in his own study and research. Learning a lot of knowledge recorded in the database of the big clock. Studying the unique path he has taken in this world. Combining super god technology with various black technologies, superpowers and bug-level energy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The latest data shows that your physical condition has reached a state where it can adapt to the 3rd generation super gene. Will you upgrade it immediately? The voice of the big clock appeared in Li Qingyun's mind. Has it reached the stage where it can adapt? Li Qingyun was a little excited. The upgrade from the 2nd generation to the 3rd generation is a leap forward. At the same time, it also indicates that Li Qingyun has made a lot of progress in his mastery of the big clock and his understanding of super god technology. Yes, the big clock gave a positive answer. Super genes have certain adaptation conditions for the human body, especially after entering the 3rd generation. The 1st and 2nd generations can be mass-produced through the latest developments in technology. But the 3rd generation still has many limitations. This is why it took Li Qingyun only a short year to be promoted from the 1st generation to the 2nd generation, and it was only because of the fusion of the thunder factor of the thunder god. But it took more than 2 years to be promoted to the 3rd generation. This time, the promotion was only possible with the full cooperation of the big clock and the construction of the dark matter plane space for a long time. Upgrade, let me feel what the 3rd generation is like. Li Qingyun was already impatient. Yes, the big clock agreed, and at the same time, a large amount of dark energy began to be mobilized. In this manner, the other 5 scientists walked out of the room and looked at the location of Li Qingyun's laboratory. They all felt the fluctuation of energy around them. They had not seen the scene where the light and temperature in the space changed due to the mobilization of huge energy for a long time. They all understood that Li Qingyun must be doing something at this time. But without Li Qingyun's permission, they could only watch like this. Super gene system, bind the dark matter plane space, data connection terminal confirmed, dark matter plane structure energy, start to import into the super gene engine. This is a process of completely fusing and binding the dark matter plane with the super gene. In the past, Li Qingyun used pure his own power when fighting. When this terminal connection is completed, his energy will directly bind to the entire dark matter plane space. As long as the connection between the dark matter plane and the super gene is not cut off, Li Qingyun can obtain a constant and unlimited energy. This is also the true meaning of achieving eternity based on energy. If the energy is not used up, then you will never die. Even if you suffer a serious injury, even if the body is pierced and the heart is broken, it can be healed quickly with a supply of energy. Of course, the 3rd generation super soldier is not invincible. For example, a fractured wound is difficult to connect back. If the fracture is still in the vital part of the body, it can be directly fatal. For example, if someone cuts off the head with a sword, because the head is separated from the body, part of it cannot obtain the energy supplement of the dark matter plane space, and that part will naturally die. If the vital part of the body dies, the overall function of the entire super soldier cannot function, so it will also die. As for injuries such as piercing the heart and God Killer number 1 piercing the head, because the whole body is still connected together, it can draw energy from the dark plane space through other super gene engines to supplement, so it can recover quickly. The best example is Feng Xing, who was shot in the forehead by a God Killer number 1 but was still alive and well, but died completely after being chopped off by Thornton. It seems that I don't respect this angel Feng Xing, but she is indeed a good example. Of course, if you upgrade to the 4th generation divine body, it will be different. The 4th generation divine body has reached the atomic level. The energy of the dark matter plane space can be directly supplied to every atomic cell in the body. Therefore, even if the body is cut into many parts, he will not die. Moreover, according to the initial setting of the data, the body is a complete hole in the dark matter plane space. Therefore, even if the cut part of the body is transferred to a far place, it will still fly back by itself, overlap with the main body, and restore to its original appearance. The technology of the 4th generation divine body is also in the database of the Big Clock. However, Li Qingyun cannot upgrade to that level now. At this stage, having the 3rd generation is already very good for Li Qingyun. Chapter 70, Implementation, Void Class Gene Engine. The upgrade of the 3rd generation super soldier has been completed. But Li Qingyun's upgrade process is not over yet. The computing power of the Big Clock has been greatly improved because of the addition of space gems and the binding of more stellar energy at the same time. In the past 2 years, it has already collected more void matter. Based on the void technology possessed by the Big Clock, Li Qingyun naturally prepared the upgrade plan of the void-level super gene engine as soon as possible. Now that he is upgrading to the 3rd generation super soldier, he naturally has to install this void engine in his body as soon as possible. Although it is not yet in an activated state, it can be used as a means of saving Li Qingyun's life. When he is fatally injured, he can recover by passively opening the void engine. Even if he is not fatally injured, if his own strength cannot solve the crisis at hand, he can still choose to activate it actively to obtain more powerful energy. Even in the end, he doesn't need to use these at all. With this void engine as a basis, he can still directly upgrade the black hole engine after obtaining black hole matter. In Li Qingyun's plan, through the Big Clock, the best state that Li Qingyun can obtain is the black hole engine and the 5th generation of divine body. This is the latest and most advanced technology developed by the god of death Karl. Although Li Qingyun still wants to go further, he obviously can't do it at present. When he can't do it, he should be down to earth and aim at what he can see. As for wanting to go further, he will wait until his horizons are broader and his knowledge is richer, and then slowly consider it. This is a step-by-step process, and it is also the safest approach. The void engine has been installed, the current state is not turned on, the notification information from the Big Clock came, and Li Qingyun's upgrade finally completed the last step. He can feel the change of energy in his body at this moment. It is an extremely abundant feeling, as if no matter how much he squanders, the energy in his body can never be consumed. But what really makes him most happy is his current use of energy and his application of the dark matter plane space. In the dark matter plane space constructed for him by the big clock, there are now many devices and functions. However, as a second-generation warrior, he could not fully exert these abilities. But now, he can drive them immediately with just a thought. Wormhole barriers, solar flares, energy conversion. Li Qingyun has all the conventional combat methods used by the super warriors in the Super God universe. Moreover, in addition to these simple abilities, there are some more profound things. Li Qingyun can recognize some of them, which are the things of Xiandao Liang and Melo Shinting. Li Qingyun can also imagine the source of these technologies. In the process of studying the void, in order to push away the biggest stumbling block in front of him, Holy Kisha, he once studied the super genes and some abilities of angels. Later, in order to master the driving of stars to bomb black holes, the death god Karl also asked the Teodi Legion to capture the sunlight Reina. In the negotiation with Pan Zhen, the death god Karl also obtained some of the Xiandao Liang's technology. In addition, the abilities and technologies of all the super warriors of the Shen civilization are in the big clock. The third generation of super warriors, Li Qingyun raised his right hand, and a golden sphere appeared in his hand. This is a flare light group formed by his introduction of stellar energy in an instant. The energy contained in this light group, once it explodes, is definitely no less powerful than a nuclear bomb. Li Qingyun now is a person who can really make a nuclear bomb with his hands. Just a part of the technology of the sun's light can achieve this level. If it is the real sun's light, what kind of existence would it be? Li Qingyun sighed. Although he is confident that with the assistance of the big clock, his potential and strength are definitely not inferior to the gods of the three major god-making projects. But there is no doubt that they are better than him at the starting point. Galaxy power, no Star Wars, sunlight, time and space rose. Each of them was born after the Super God Academy spent 10,000 years of research and cultivation. Each of them, from the moment they became super soldiers, has mastered very powerful abilities. Li Qingyun is different. His super gene is the most primitive. His ability needs to be continuously filled in the future to be improved. However, Li Qingyun is not unfortunate. On the contrary, he is very lucky. He was bound to the big clock from the beginning. And the world he lives in is a very magical world. In this world, there are too many mysterious powers. Now Li Qingyun, he has only integrated one of them. That is the power factor of Thor, the god of thunder, who is an heirseer of Asgard. Li Qingyun is not just a super soldier in a simple sense. He can actually be regarded as half a god. A super soldier with divine power. Among the 3,000 supernatural factors, what other factors are suitable for me to integrate? Li Qingyun asked. He wanted to further improve his strength. Moreover, after upgrading to the third generation, his body can already withstand more superpowers at the same time. There will be no conflict between them, nor will they become a burden to each other because of too many types. For Li Qingyun, he still has at least 4 supernatural factors that he wants to obtain. Chaos magic, God group genes, phoenix power, fairy power. Among them, only chaos magic and God group genes have been confirmed to exist. Phoenix Force and Fairy Force have both appeared in Marvel Comics. Together with Chaos Magic, they are known as the 3 major forces of the universe. But so far, they have not appeared in the framework of this series of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Li Qingyun has not been able to find any traces of them through the Great Clock. As for the Celestial Gene, this is the most accessible to Li Qingyun at present. It is hidden inside the Earth. As the managers of the universe, the Celestials have a very deep relationship with eternity, and they have a great connection with the multiverse. Moreover, the Celestials themselves are very powerful, just like the Judge Alyssum, whose huge body exceeds that of planets like the Earth by far, and its power can easily destroy a starry sky. Although, Li Qingyun currently has very little information about them. Most of them are obtained through simple information introductions before crossing, or through analysis of some clips in the movie. But this does not prevent them from becoming the target worthy of Li Qingyun's attention at present. Chapter 71 Gods and Faith. There is no option you want that is suitable for fusion, the big clock replied. Nothing I want. Has the chaos magic and celestial group factor still not been analyzed? Li Qingyun asked in confusion. Chaos magic is too special and is in the pre-eruption stage. The analyzed data needs to be deduced and simulated before it can be finally applied, so there has not been much progress. As for the celestial group on Earth is in the incubation period. It is actually still a spiritual body and has not formed an effective life, so it cannot be extracted. It is recommended that if possible, it is best to directly find a celestial group that has already formed, even if it is a corpse of a celestial group as a specimen. Perhaps the results can be analyzed faster. The big clock described the situation in detail. One is in an inactive state, and the other is not formed at all. Although they can grasp certain information, these data are not enough to be used for fusion with Li Qingyun himself. The corpse of the celestial group? There is really such a thing in the universe. The corpse of the celestial group has appeared clearly in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That is the void. A head left behind by a former celestial god after his death. Now the head is controlled by a collector, who has turned it into a huge black market trading site. At the same time, the collector is still digging for the treasures left by the head of the celestial god. The head itself is a treasure. Go to the universe, Li Qingyun was thinking. There is no harm in going to the universe. But the question is, if he leaves, what should he do with the manor? Li Qingyun's manor is not nothing now. He has gradually built a huge factory here. Many of the equipment of the dark matter plane architecture were originally built in this underground factory. The technology contained here can be said to be beyond everyone on Earth at this stage. Once Li Qingyun leaves, these technologies will inevitably attract the covetousness of the whole world. Especially those who have long known that Li Qingyun has super high technology. Although Banner and the others will continue to stay here, the underground laboratory and the manor itself need certain defense measures. Li Qingyun is no longer penniless. Since you already have a home, you need an assistant who can look after it. Do you have information about some of the warriors in the Teodi Legion in your database? Li Qingyun couldn't directly summon the super warriors he liked through the big clock. Because he didn't know the super gene code, he didn't have the data of the super warriors. But since the big clock assisted the death god Karl in promoting the development of the Teodi civilization, it should have recorded a lot of information in the Teodi civilization. Especially those warriors who were completely transformed into mechas, the so-called warriors blessed by the death god. Their bodies were completely freed from the flesh and loaded into the transformed steel body. Then during the entire loading process, the big clock should record the entire loading process, including the recorded information of the loading. The database does have specific information about the Teodi mecha. By replicating the data, we can create the same Teodi mecha, but the problem is that they are all believers loyal to the god of death Karl. If you want to replicate, you must reshape and redefine the data itself. The big clock showed the answer, and then gave a reminder. These remade warriors should be given a new god and belief, the big clock said, and its last sentence made Li Qingyun fall into deep thought. God and belief. This is the stage that Li Qingyun will eventually develop to after he becomes a super soldier from an ordinary person. But in the past, Li Qingyun never thought about what kind of god he would become. What would his belief concept be like? This question can actually be sorted out directly through your memory data to get a rough framework, the big clock said. Through my memory data, Li Qingyun asked in confusion. Yes, your past living habits and the senses naturally formed in your mind are the most suitable framework for you. The upper and lower limits of this framework are the upper and lower limits of your believers. As for the final belief and ideal, this still needs to be determined by you. What the big clock said made Li Qingyun nod silently. The habits he had developed in the past are indeed the most suitable civilization standards for himself. As for the upper and lower limits, Li Qingyun can still adjust them slowly according to his own growth in the future. However, this final belief and ideal pursuit still requires him to think carefully. What do I want to achieve most? Li Qingyun was examining and asking himself. He wanted to figure out what he wanted to pursue most in his heart. Is it supreme power? Is it the strongest power? Or eternal life? These are what Li Qingyun wants. But it seems that this is not what he wants to achieve most. For the time being, let's decide on one based on supreme power, the strongest power, and eternal life. Li Qingyun did not continue to struggle in this regard. It is not possible to figure out what one's true ideals and pursuits are by just thinking about them. It takes years of baptism and life's trials to slowly understand. I understand. I will define your identity in the name of the Lord of Shen. The Teodi warriors created will be the most loyal warriors under your command. Its name is Shen Mecha, the big clock answered. Then, it began to operate the underground factory and began to create these mechas. With the exploration of the universe by the big clock and the collection of powerful substances in the universe, Li Qingyun now has a lot of resources in his hands. Li Qingyun has solid space metals, even dark iron elements and void matter. The outer space metal he got from Counselor Yan before has already been fused with a certain amount of dark iron elements to create real dark alloy armor. And now, the Shen mechas they want to make naturally cannot be made of ordinary metals. Incorporating a certain amount of dark iron elements can enhance the combat effectiveness of these mechas. Even Li Qingyun directly asked the big clock to equip them with flame-level blades. Under the control of the big clock, with a manufacturing capacity of the underground factory, 8 Shen mechas were manufactured in one go. They will become the guardians of Li Qingyun's manor and the Dark Elf Mothership. They will also be Li Qingyun's real subordinates. Chapter 72, The Teodi Legion recreates the Shikan King. Shi, Shanglu, Feng Lei, there were 8 Shen mechas made, and Li Qingyun recognized the 3 in front of him. Among them was the Teodi King, and 2 of them had led the Teodi Legion's vanguard to invade the earth. Greetings to the Lord of Shen. Shi knelt down first, and the 7 Shen mechas behind him knelt down together. This is their respect for God. Yet, Li Qingyun nodded with satisfaction. The weakest of these 8 is the level of the first and second generation super soldiers. Although if they really fight, they may not be able to beat the second generation super soldiers with rich combat experience. But there is no doubt that in this Marvel world, as the choice of people to guard their homes, they are already very suitable. Are you clear about the orders I gave you? Li Qingyun looked at Shi. This guy was quite arrogant in the movie, always thinking that everyone else was only worthy of sniffing the farts of his god Carl, but he was KO'd by Jezailan with a big sword. Protect the manor and the mothership. Don't tell anyone that you are only worthy of smelling the farts of my god Li Qingyun, Shi answered seriously. However, it felt a little weird no matter how you looked at it. Only worthy of smelling the farts of my god Li Qingyun. Not to mention a bit of a spoof. It's not as easy to say as only worthy of smelling the farts of my god Carl. But the purpose of Li Qingyun doing this is just to prevent this sentence from spreading in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because of these Teodi. Well, just remember it, Li Qingyun didn't dwell on this issue too much. Because the more he dwelled on it, the more he dwelled on it. What's the matter with these mechas? Zhao Hailan came to Li Qingyun, and she looked at these Shen mechas curiously. I'm going to leave the earth for a while, let them help me look after the house. Li Qingyun didn't hide it, because there was not much point in hiding it. With Shi and the others, it would be useless for ordinary people to come. If Shi and the others couldn't deal with it, then even if Li Qingyun didn't say that he was leaving, the other party would have a way to confirm whether he was still there. They looked different from the robots we saw earlier. Zhao Hailan looked at Shi and the others, then turned to look at a robot that was cleaning in the distance. Although they look like robots, they were originally real life. Shi and his group of Shen mechas are naturally different from ordinary robots. Real life, could it be that a person's brain was uploaded to the mecha through information uploading? After all, he is a physics scientist. Although Zhao Hailan is not studying mechas and artificial intelligence, he can still understand some knowledge in this area. Yes, Li Qingyun nodded. How did they do it? Upload a person's brain completely to the machine. Zhao Hailan looked at the mechas in front of him in surprise. He even walked over and observed them closely. Go away, human woman. Shi is not the kind of robot that allows people to look at and observe it at will. Zhao Hailan was startled and quickly stepped back a few steps. What are you talking about, Shi? Li Qingyun's face froze. Although he knew that this was the nature of Shi, now they were under his command, how could he be so rude to his friends? I'm sorry, God. Shi lowered his head quickly. He would be vicious to everyone else. But he would be extremely respectful when facing Li Qingyun. Because after he was resurrected by the big clock, the original god in his mind, the god of death Carl, had been replaced by Li Qingyun. The people of their Teodi core will be extremely loyal to their god. You can treat other people as you like, but you must be restrained when dealing with my friends. Li Qingyun will not forcibly change Shi's personality. Because once it is changed, Shi will no longer be Shi. But he must let Shi understand how to distinguish between enemies and friends. At the very least, when facing his friends, he must restrain himself, and he must try his best to restrain his disgust for humans in front of these people. Yes, God, Shi agreed respectfully. The other 7 Shen mechas behind him also bowed their heads. This meant that they had also memorized it. What kind of people were they in their lifetime? Why are they so hostile to me? Zhao Hailin retreated to Li Qingyun's side and asked in confusion. They are beasts, not humans. Beasts? Zhao Hailin was even more confused. She had never heard of such a group. Beasts are an intelligent group that evolved from beast forms. They have fought many physical wars with us humans, and although they failed in the end, but because of the different races, they still have great hostility towards humans, at least towards most humans. The reason why they are not hostile to all humans is that some humans have become their rulers, their beliefs and gods. In the Super God universe, this person was the god of death Karl. And in this Marvel Cinematic Universe, it is Li Qingyun. Since there's hostility, they won't kill people if you leave, right? Zhao Hailin began to worry. These Shen mechas, no matter how you look at them, seem to have strong combat power. If Li Qingyun left the earth, no one would take care of them. In addition, they already had hatred and disgust for humans, so they would go on a killing spree and take revenge on humans. As long as they don't come to invade and destroy my manor and the Dark Elf Mothership, they won't take the initiative to attack anyone. Li Qingyun gave instructions to Shishi and the others. Their mission is to protect Li Qingyun's home, the underground manufacturing plant and the Dark Elf Mothership. As long as they don't take the initiative to invade these places, they won't take action. But if someone really wants to invade, for Shishi and the others who came from the Teoti Core and regarded life as worthless, there would be no way they would show the slightest mercy. If we enter your underground factory, will we also be attacked by them? Zhao Hailin had to clarify this point in advance. Will you go in? Li Qingyun did not answer, but asked a question in reverse. I won't go in anyway, Zhao Hailin quickly denied it. Not to mention that the direction she originally studied was different from Li Qingyun. Entering that underground factory would not be of much benefit to her at all. Just looking at these Shen mechas in front of them, with them guarding the entrance to the underground factory, who would dare to break in? If you don't go in, then it's okay, Li Qingyun said. And the meaning of his words is also very clear. As long as Zhao Hailin and Banner and the others don't enter the underground factory, nothing will happen. But if they want to go in, if they don't tell me in advance, Shishi and the others will not let them in. The basement is Li Qingyun's confidential place. The people living in this manor know this for a long time. Breaking in without permission is an offense. Chapter 73 Draw a picture of the universe and the sky. Of the 8 Shen mechas, King Shikun was arranged in the manor. He will be the leader of the other 7 Shen mechas. 2 of the 7 Shen mechas entered the Dark Elves Mothership and were responsible for staying there and studying some technologies in the Dark Elves Mothership. 2 were stationed at the entrance of the underground factory for a long time. The remaining 3, following King Shikun's arrangement, either took turns with others or on standby at any time, waiting for new instructions from Li Qingyun from the universe. After handling the affairs of guarding the house, Li Qingyun should also prepare to go to the universe. Are you really determined to go to the universe alone? Banner looked at Li Qingyun, who had completed his preparations and was about to set off for the universe. Although the 2 of them had been to Asgard before. But that was Thor's hometown, and they were also familiar with it. But this time, Li Qingyun really planned to venture into the universe. God's vision should not be limited to this small planet, Li Qingyun said with a smile. I don't have many friends here. You are the one I have known the longest. If anything happens at home, you have to help me keep an eye on it. Li Qingyun said so, but Banner subconsciously glanced at the devouring beast and the other Shen mechas. It is true that he and Li Qingyun are friends, and he also believes that what Li Qingyun said is true. But with these Shen mechas, why do they need him to help look after anything? I have been here for 2 or 3 years, and it is almost time to go back to see my relatives at home. Banner did not plan to stay here forever. This is a good research base. The technology mastered by Li Qingyun is also very helpful to Banner. This time Li Qingyun is going out, and he also wants to take the opportunity to go back. It must feel good to go back in a state where he can fully control his own power. Okay, Li Qingyun saw Banner's thoughts. Then, Dr. Selvig, Dr. Zhao Hailin, Dr. Wang Haiming, and Dr. Chen Li, I can only ask you for this. Li Qingyun turned his head and looked at the other 4 people. We will do our job well, Zhao Haiming replied. The other 3 also nodded. But each of them understood that they stayed mainly to study their own technology. When they said they would take care of it, they were more concerned about the people outside. They told them not to have any crooked ideas at this time and come to the manor to die in vain. Let's go. Li Qingyun didn't say anything else. He opened the space wormhole and walked in directly. He wanted to go to the universe, but he didn't know much about the universe here. The exploration of the big clock was mainly to collect void matter, dark iron elements, etc., and with a short time, there was no way to explore the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Therefore, if Li Qingyun wanted to go to the universe and the void, he needed a pair of eyes to know the interstellar coordinates of some major planets after he went to the universe. Therefore, the first place Li Qingyun went to was Asgard. On the Asgard Rainbow Bridge, the Asgard Guardian who overlooked the entire universe stood there straight, looking at the wall in front of him. Although he was in the middle of a circular device, it seemed that there were walls all around. But his eyes were observing the distant universe. Heimdall was not surprised by Li Qingyun's arrival, because he had already seen Li Qingyun's move to the universe, and guessed that he would come to him first. Wouldn't it be boring for you to stare at the universe like this all the time? Li Qingyun walked to Heimdall's side, imitated him, and looked at the wall in front of him. When you stare at the starry sky for a long time, you will gradually find that such observation itself is a kind of fun, Heimdall answered, but he didn't turn his head to look at Li Qingyun. It seems to be quite high-end, Li Qingyun said. Since you like to observe so much, do you want to help me? What help? Help me record the entire universe, Li Qingyun answered lightly, but his words made Heimdall stunned. Record the universe? Heimdall looked at Li Qingyun in surprise. He couldn't believe that Li Qingyun asked him to help with this matter. Yes, now it has become that Li Qingyun is looking at the front with a calm face. The universe is so vast, how could anyone in this world be able to record it completely? Heimdall has been observing the universe for thousands of years, but up to now, he has only been able to see and record a small part of the area. How could anyone in this world be able to record the entire universe? Just because you can't do it doesn't mean I can't do it, Li Qingyun said. Don't you want to connect all the starry skies you have seen to form a complete starry sky map? Heimdall hesitated. Of course, he had thought about drawing a complete starry sky map through the universe he observed. But such a thing is simply impossible. Even Odin, the father of the gods in Asgard, can't do it. In fact, this universe is too vast, and humans, even all the gods he knows, can't even explore the entire starry sky. Not to mention, you have to record the entire starry sky and then compile it into a map. Then if I can do it, are you willing to help me with this? Li Qingyun is not just talking here. His plugin, the greatest celestial computer in the super god universe that he had bound to when he crossed over, has the ability to calculate the world tree model of the entire universe. Although, in the end, the big clock was stopped by the so-called void. The scope that can be explored can only be identified as the known universe, and it is impossible to set foot in the void outside the known universe. But there is no doubt that the big clock has the powerful ability to record and calculate the entire universe. Li Qingyun may spend tens of thousands of years in the future, relying on the calculation of the big clock to travel around the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before that, if he can directly obtain the information he has seen and understood for thousands of years through Heimdall, he can draw a star map. Finally, he continues to use Heimdall's ability to observe the entire universe, and continues to observe more, farther, and larger areas of the universe. Perhaps he can understand the cosmic pattern of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe faster. And now there is only one key question. That is, as the guardian of Asgard, Heimdall, is he willing to help himself? It seems that you are all jumping orders. Is it still written more watery? Chapter 74, a shortcut to explore the universe. Now, Li Qingyun is waiting for Heimdall's reply. Drawing a map of the universe is definitely very attractive to someone who has been observing the universe for a long time and never gets tired of it. But Heimdall's identity is quite special. He is the guardian of Asgard. In this way, the decision he has to make becomes more difficult to make. How do you draw this map of the universe? Heimdall looked at Li Qingyun. He was actually tempted, but he still had to ask clearly what Li Qingyun was thinking. I can implant a program in your brain, and the information you see in the future will be automatically transmitted to me, and then I will draw this map of the universe through the information I perceive you see. Implant a program in my brain. Heimdall's face darkened. If you want to get what you see in your eyes and the data recorded in your brain at the same time, you can only get it in this way. Li Qingyun also knew that this method was actually a little difficult to achieve. As the guardian of Asgard, Heimdall had too much important information in his mind that needed to be kept secret. Moreover, even ordinary people would not be willing to show their brains to others. I can't agree to this condition, Heimdall refused. He couldn't agree to implant a program into his brain. If you don't do this, you can only start from scratch. Li Qingyun knew that it would be difficult for Heimdall to agree to his suggestion. So, he also had a backup plan. How to start from scratch. Heimdall's interest, which had just been extinguished, was restored at this time. I can make a device and put it on your eyes, so that what you can see, I can also see. Moreover, you can take this device off at any time, so that when you don't want to be observed by me, I can't observe through your perspective, Li Qingyun said. This method is feasible. This time, Heimdall could accept it. The biggest disadvantage of this method is that it is impossible to obtain the data recorded in your brain for thousands of years. The entire universe star map needs to start from scratch, and draw it bit by bit. Li Qingyun also knew that this method was the easiest for Heimdall to accept. But this is not the most rewarding plan for Li Qingyun. However, he would not be upset about it. Respect each other's privacy. The premise of cooperation is win-win. These principles are clear to Li Qingyun. Besides, this is just an interest for Heimdall, but it is really useful for Li Qingyun. Starting from scratch, that's also a kind of fun, isn't it? Heimdall said. He was very satisfied with this plan. That's right, Li Qingyun said. Wait for me, Li Qingyun said, and then he began to remotely control the underground factory on the Earth based on the big clock and began to produce this special device. With the technology of the big clock and the help of the underground factory, it is not difficult to manufacture such a device for obtaining visual information. In just a few minutes, the device has been completed. After that, it was directly transmitted from the Earth by Li Qingyun through the wormhole. It was a transparent crystal, only the size of a finger cap, and after sticking it to the edge of the corner of the eye, it would immediately completely blend into Heimdall's skin. Only when Heimdall reached out to touch it, they would reappear and then be successfully removed by Heimdall. This is really a good thing, even with Heimdall's wide knowledge. He was a little shocked when he saw this device. What good thing is it? Thor, the god of thunder, came. Li Qingyun suddenly came to Asgard, and stayed with Heimdall for more than 10 minutes. If he, the prince of Asgard, didn't know about it, he would be a failure. Since he knew, how could he not come to see it? Just when he came, he heard Heimdall sighing. A synchronous communication device can directly transmit the scene that Heimdall sees to me synchronously, Li Qingyun explained. This is really a good thing. Heimdall showed a barely detectable smile. He was really satisfied with this device. Why did you suddenly think of giving this device to Heimdall? Thor was a little curious. As a friend of Li Qingyun, he hadn't received the synchronous communication device sent by Li Qingyun yet, so how come Heimdall got it first? It's like this. Heimdall explained it to Thor in detail. Thor was also shocked when he heard that Li Qingyun was going to use Heimdall's ability to understand the universe and draw a cosmic star map. This is an infinitely vast universe, and it is a universe that is constantly moving. How could anyone draw a star map of such a vast universe? However, since this was Li Qingyun's proposal, and Heimdall was also very interested. If the two of them wanted to work together to draw this star map, he would say nothing regardless of whether it would succeed or not. However, Thor was very interested in this synchronous communication device. In the end, under his strong request, Li Qingyun could only make one for Thor. However, the one he gave Thor was not specifically for the eyes. It is similar to the wireless communication equipment on Earth, but it is more secretive, has more powerful communication functions, and is enough to cover almost the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. At least for now, there is no area where the big clock cannot build a communication link. As long as there is dark energy, as long as there is no special communication shielding means, the communication of the big clock will be unimpeded. Are you satisfied now? Li Qingyun said helplessly. Yet, I'm satisfied, Thor nodded with satisfaction. You didn't come here just to draw a cosmic star map with me this time, did you? Heimdall was familiar with Li Qingyun at this time. He spoke more casually. I want to go to the universe, but I don't have any coordinates of the star map in the universe, so I came to ask you for some. Li Qingyun was going to the void, and then he would go to Morag and Vormir. Since he already knew where the two Infinity Stones were, how could he not look for them now that he was in the universe? The power gem of Morag was within his reach. Although the soul gem of Vormir had special conditions for acquisition, it didn't mean that Li Qingyun had no chance to obtain it. For everything, you have to try it before you know it. Chapter 75 The Strange Soul Gem. The synchronous communication device has been given to Heimdall. After that, The map of the universe can be drawn by the information transmitted by the big clock. Now, he also got the interstellar coordinates to the void, Morag and Vormir. Without stopping, Li Qingyun went directly to Morag. If you want to take it at the beginning. Take it away before Star-Lord, Ronan, and Thanos arrive. The gate of the temple, the energy shield that stores the cosmic spirit ball, these facilities used to prevent others from taking the Power Stone, are all useless in front of Li Qingyun. The power of Super God technology has surpassed the technology of Morag by far. After getting the cosmic spirit ball, Li Qingyun didn't even open it to see the Power Stone inside. The wormhole opened, and he went directly to the next location, which was on a cliff on Vormir. Not long after he left Morag, the planet welcomed a new guest. It was Star-Lord wearing old headphones and humming like crazy. After Star-Lord, there are people from Ronan's army. But no matter who it is, the result after arriving at Morag planet will be empty-handed. Because the cosmic spirit ball has long been taken away by Li Qingyun. Welcome, Lord of Shen. The Red Skull, hidden under a black robe, appeared in front of Li Qingyun. As the guide of the Soul Stone, the Red Skull at this time already has many strange abilities. Knowing some things that ordinary people in the universe don't know, it can avoid being hurt by any power, and even transcend life and death. Being controlled by the Soul Stone is the Red Skull's misfortune. But the power given by the Soul Stone also makes it much stronger than before. You know me well, Li Qingyun was a little curious. In the movie, when facing Thanos and Black Widow, they all seemed to know everything. Now, when he saw himself, he actually opened his mouth and said Lord of Shen. Lord of Shen, this is the name Li Qingyun gave before leaving the Earth. It is to commemorate the Shen civilization that created a big clock, so the title of God was given. No, I actually know nothing about you. Red Skull shook his head helplessly. As the guide of the Soul Gem, he can see through the souls of people who come here through the Soul Gem, and can see all their information. But this time, he failed. He didn't know the person who suddenly appeared in front of him at all. The only thing he could see was a title, the title of the Lord of Shen. But he didn't know what the Lord of Shen meant, and who the Lord of Shen was. At the moment you just arrived, a strange power quietly invaded your soul, as if wanting to read some information. The sound of the big clock rang in Li Qingyun's mind. Just at that moment, when he felt a strange energy coming, Li Qingyun's self-defense program had already started. The big clock provided enough energy, so Li Qingyun was not read any information by this strange energy. The Soul Gem is worthy of being the most mysterious and strange one among the 6 Infinity Gems, Li Qingyun sighed in his heart. Among the 6 Infinity Gems, if we say that the one that shows the strongest power is the Power Gem. The Power Stone can destroy a planet in an instant. In terms of functionality, the Time Stone and the Reality Stone are obviously better. The Time Stone allows people to travel between the past and the future and master the powerful rule of time. The Reality Stone has the ability to rewrite reality. And it can actually subvert some conventional rules and energy laws in the universe. During the time when the ether particles were attached to the Xianxia sword, Li Qingyun had further understood this property of the ether particles. However, whether it was the Power Stone, the Time Stone, the Reality Stone, or the other 2 Space Stones and the Mind Stone, none of them was as powerful as the Soul Stone in front of him. It has been confirmed that the Mind Stone and the ether particles have a certain spirituality. But in terms of spirituality, it is obvious that the Soul Stone is more obvious and peculiar. It is hidden on the Vormir star, and the Red Skull is transferred here through the Cosmic Cube to become its guide. No matter who comes, if you want to get the Soul Stone, you need to dedicate the soul of your most beloved person before you can get it. I ignored the Red Skull. Li Qingyun walked directly to the edge of the cliff and looked into the arrowhead. His eyes suddenly widened at this moment, and his aura suddenly increased at this moment. Li Qingyun activated the Eye of Insight and mobilized the surrounding dark energy to conduct a full-scale search of the space in front of him. He wanted to try to find the specific location of the Soul Gem and know how the Soul Gem was hidden. But at this moment, no matter how much he searched, no matter how much dark energy he mobilized, the result seemed to be the same. There was nothing in front of him. The Soul Gem did not seem to be in this place at all, not even on this planet. Your power is very strong, but it is impossible to find the Soul Gem by brute force alone. The Red Skull reminded him that what he said at this moment was actually what the Soul Gem wanted to say. The Soul Gem itself cannot speak, but the connection between it and the Red Skull allows it to use the Red Skull to convey its meaning. It cannot be obtained by force alone. Li Qingyun stopped searching for the soul gem. He actually knew that his trip would probably be fruitless. After all, Thanos, who possessed the 3 Infinity Stones of power, space, and reality, had no other options when he came here, and could only push Gamora off the cliff. Although Li Qingyun now possesses 4 Infinity Stones, and he also has the Great Clock to bless him. But the increase or decrease of power still has the same effect. Perhaps to find the Soul Stone, we need another way, Li Qingyun thought in his heart. As long as it exists in space, it can definitely be found, unless it is not in the space we think it is. Li Qingyun took over the words of the Great Clock and expressed his guess. The Soul Stone, it is rarely introduced in the movie. But in the comics, it is a stone that is emphasized. In the description of the Soul Stone in the comics, there is such a setting. That is, there is a small universe hidden in the Soul Stone, which is different from the real universe and contains extremely powerful and special energy. Perhaps the current Soul Stone is hidden in this small universe. What it left here is just a special mark. Only when it senses that someone has followed its instructions will it come out through this mark and appear directly on that person's hand. I'm quite busy today, so I've only written the 3rd chapter so far. Please forgive me. In addition, you can criticize me, but if you bring other readers along, I will ban you permanently. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.